Pokémon, medicine and martial arts. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 451, The Fierce Fire begins. At that moment, Charmeleon, arguably the most dazzling presence in the night, seemed to erupt in flames. Not only did it appear to be ablaze, but the flame patterns etched across its body, blazing brightly, were visible in Charmeleon's piercing eyes. A closer look revealed two balls of flame blazing ever more vigorously. Yu and Charmeleon locked gazes. In a split second, Yu understood Charmeleon's message. It didn't want to be a mere spectator. It wanted to fight, to protect its companions, to fight alongside its trainer. Just as it had just faced a crisis, it had stood up for Charmeleon. It didn't matter what happened to itself, as long as the companions it cared about were safe. Who was it? Charmeleon was destined to rise to the top of the world and slap the face of its former trainer, the mightiest and most powerful Charmeleon. Just a humble question. What's going on with Charmeleon? Could it be the legendary last gasp? Someone suddenly said that. The atmosphere froze in the air as the atmosphere gradually heated up. It was an awkward moment. Fortunately, though, despite the awkwardness, it couldn't dampen Charmeleon's fiery heart. He roared to the sky, as if to encourage himself and his companions. A burst of flames pierced the darkness, breaking the gradually subsiding atmosphere. As if infected, Yu's ferocious expression softened slightly, a rare, heartwarming smile breaking through. Watching Charmeleon, whose fighting spirit seemed to be condensing into substance, Yu felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The resemblance was truly remarkable. It could be said that among all the Pokémon, apart from Pikachu, who had been with him the longest, and Suicune, the special one, Charmeleon was the most similar to him. Not only in personality and temperament, but also in their pursuits. They were all the kind of people who would face a powerful enemy to protect their loved ones and companions. Even with only their last breath or last drop of blood left, they would fight to the death, giving their all to protect the safety of those they cared about. Undoubtedly, in this extremely critical situation, Yu and Charmeleon both erupted. Yu could become an unprecedentedly ferocious ferocity, and Charmeleon could burn himself out like a candle. However, as if to comfort the women and to make the atmosphere more relaxed, Yu, in this extremely critical situation, actually acted as a lecturer. Ahem. After a few light coughs, Yu finally drew the women's attention and said, although the term last gasp can be applied to Pokémon, this isn't some so-called last gasp. If I'm not mistaken, it's the fire ability of the living dinosaur. Before the woman could ask, Yu continued, the so-called fire ability is activated when Charmeleon's health is extremely low. While Charmeleon's health is lowered, the power of its fire-type attacks increases, perhaps because none of the three women enjoyed or were skilled in Pokémon battles. Yu would provide them with some basic knowledge on the subject whenever he had the chance. After saying this, Yu said nothing more, turning back to face the evil wave, which was now only a meter away. As a result, Yu didn't notice Serena's cheeks flushing slightly after he turned away. After he had regained his composure, Yu didn't hesitate. Facing Charmeleon, which was about to join the battle, he ordered, "Go ahead, Charmeleon, use your full power, flame spray." With Charmeleon's fierce fire ability joining the fray, the advance of the evil wave visibly came to a complete halt amidst the clashing of abilities. Of course, it was only a pause. The evil wave showed no sign of retreating due to the increased power of flame spray. Only then did Yu breathe a sigh of relief. He began to carefully recall some things. Although Jengar hadn't yet revealed itself, Yu, drawing on his knowledge of Pokémon, was at least 70% certain that the attacker was Jengar. How could he possibly face such a powerful Jengar? Yu had no idea. Not to mention the possibility of offending one. While it was fine against powerful Pokémon with trainers, Yu would consciously avoid powerful wild creatures. While he might not have offended Jengar, he might have offended others. Take, for example, the S organization, with which he had a number of grudges. Of the high-ranking members of the S organization he had offended, there were probably at least 2 dozen. But that shouldn't be the case. If he wanted revenge, he would have done it long ago. So, because they hadn't retaliated, Yu gradually let down his guard. Even though his Pokemon had fought back and forth with them before, in reality, they might not have considered his strength enough. As for the enemies he had provoked in the martial arts world before, Yu hadn't even considered them, hadn't he? After all, warriors have their own ways of resolving conflicts. Whether it was Pokemon or anything else, they wouldn't let them interfere. Moreover, most people in the martial arts world were focused solely on improving their own strength, so where would they find the time to train Pokemon? After all, in their eyes, martial arts was their primary occupation, while training Pokemon was merely a side job or a hobby. After all, not every warrior is as eccentric as amateur, practicing martial arts while also moonlighting as a Pokemon trainer. And judging by past experience, he even considers the Pokemon trainer profession superior to that of a warrior, prioritizing it as his primary occupation. After ruling out all the possibilities, Yu quickly came up with an answer that was both expected and unexpected. Damn it! Could it be those weaklings from Organization S tonight? But when had their efficiency become so rapid? They didn't even wait for revenge overnight. Chapter 452, Obsessed. Yu finally remembered the group of weaklings he'd dealt with earlier. Perhaps because they were so weak, he didn't take them seriously. While he'd expected them to retaliate, he'd never imagined they'd actually send out such a formidable group of Jengers. He'd imagined they'd be able to send out a champion-level Pokemon. But judging by the situation, while Jenger hadn't yet revealed itself, Yu could already sense its strength from these brief encounters. Not champion level, but at least near champion. The gap between champion and champion might seem small, but in reality, it's a vast, almost unbridgeable chasm. And this was a champion-level Pokemon. Their power aside, their numbers might be plenty, but they weren't overly numerous either. They weren't just any old Pokemon. Leaving aside wild Pokemon that have reached semi-champion level or higher, even those raised by trainers alone would likely be no more than 200 in a single region. This includes the League Champion, the Supreme. But don't think 200 is a significant number. Consider how large a region is, how many people and Pokemon live there, and how strong are the wild Pokemon, and how many have reached semi-champion level or higher. Yu didn't know any of this. But he did know one thing: if he tried to train a Pokemon that reached or surpassed semi-champion level, the resources consumed would be substantial. This is why, when a Pokemon like the Supreme Champion level is reached, the 6 strongest Pokemon are selected as the main force. By this logic, a region with 200 known semi-champion level or higher Pokemon would be acceptable. But why did these supposedly rare semi-champion level Pokemon cause him such trouble? Yu wanted to yell, "You think too highly of me. I'm just a powerless trainer, is it really that important? Is it really that important?" Despite all the fuss, Xiaozhi would have to bear the consequences of his actions. However, this incident only made Yu even more eager to improve his strength, while also making him more cautious about the future. Damn, he randomly summoned someone, thinking it was a bronze, and then a champion was sent to teach him a lesson. It's so frustrating, isn't it? And these people are so petty. He'd messed with S organization members before, even faced off against some of their biggest names. But now, he was being bullied by a nobody, barely even a piece of trash. Ugh. He wanted to feel the power of someone else's protection again. But Yu had really wronged Shinji this time. He'd only sent Jenger for reconnaissance and a test run. But unexpectedly, Jenger, once out of his sight, acted like a wild horse, unleashing a prank. He immediately attacked Yu and the others, seemingly playing a prank too far. After all, even Yu, a warrior, felt threatened. Yu, let us help. Charmeleon, use Spark. Eevee, use Shadow Ball. Long-tailed Charmeleon, use Flame Jet. Melodic, use Water Pillar. Vulpix, use Flame Jet. And Dragonite, use Shadow Ball. Just as Yu was coming back to his senses, he heard 3 sharp cries. "You guys." Yu turned to look at the 3 women, his words lost for a moment. "Yu, why are you still standing there? Didn't we say before that we'll face any difficulties together? So, take command." A sweet smile played on Air's lips, and she reached out her warm, jade-like hand to clasp Yu's. "There's strength in numbers, let's all help together." Seeing Yu looking at her, Serena winked playfully and immediately reached out her small hand to grasp Yu's other. Xiaoxu, who had previously looked somewhat fragile, now exuded an unprecedented determination. Even though we're weak, we really want to help you, so let's do our bit." With that, Xiaoxu stepped forward and joined Serena in pulling Yu's hand. It seemed as if only in this way could they feel safe, and also that they wanted to convey their mutual determination to Yu. Yu felt his previously cold and lonely heart suddenly filled with warmth. This warmth brought him immense comfort, and even Yu, who was considered to have a stronger mind than most, found it difficult to extricate himself from it. Yu stared blankly at the three women, and in his eyes, he saw them as more lovable than ever before. For a moment, Yu seemed to have forgotten that this was a life-or-death situation. His face was dazed and drooling, and he almost drooled. Suddenly, an amusing scene unfolded on the field. Surrounded by a swarm of Pokémon, Yu stared at three adorable and charming girls with an infatuated expression. The three girls, initially calm, were eventually bashful, their cheeks slightly reddened, their heads lowered in a state of shyness. Around them, Pokémon were engaged in a fierce battle. Flame jets, freezing beams, 100,000 volts, a series of abilities crisscrossed the air, illuminating the small patch of darkness. Simultaneously, the Pokémon roared, seemingly encouraging themselves, yet also expressing their frustration at their own weakness. Boom boom boom, finally, a series of deafening explosions shattered the delicate atmosphere. The explosion also woke Yu, who had been lost in the adorable expressions of the three women, as if from a dream. He quickly turned to survey the situation. He saw that the once powerful evil wave had vanished, along with Pichu and the others' abilities. Clearly, both sides had suffered heavy losses in this skill duel. Chapter 453, A Battle of Light. Zheng beyond the glow of the campfire, the surrounding darkness was filled with a cry of a Pokémon, followed closely by a chilling laugh. He exhaled deeply. Although he had been mentally prepared, when the moment finally arrived, Yu couldn't help but tremble. He felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and excitement. After all, while it had been said to be a mutually assured loss, a group of Pokémon against a single Pokémon was no longer a question. And if they were truly competing, it would simply be a matter of skill. It could be said that the real battle had only just begun. Zhenger's laughter continued to echo, and now that he had revealed himself, he fully embodied his ghostly Pokémon species. Without the need to carefully brush, he naturally stopped hiding. Even so, Zhenger's form remained ethereal. Especially since his body was already pitch black, the darkness became his perfect shield. The intermittent appearance of his figure added a touch of eeriness to Zhenger. "Zhenger, you're finally willing to come out and have a fair fight with us," Yu shouted at Zhenger, determined not to lose in momentum. "That's right, it's us, not me." Although Yu also wanted to challenge Pikachu and the others to a one-on-one duel with Zhenger, it was just a thought. He was outmatched in skill and unfamiliar with the opponent, so he could only resort to a shameless human wave strategy. Zhenger was thrilled at the moment, especially after hearing Yu's call. Great! Finally, someone's playing with him. Ha ha ha! Although his master had only asked him to scout out the group's strength and use force as a deterrent, he hadn't said he couldn't have some fun. Looks like tonight won't be too boring. After all, looking at the eager eyes of those Pokémon eager to play a good game with him, just thinking about it makes you feel a little impatient. Pikachu, why bother talking to it? Just go for it. Pikachu's limbs tensed, crouching on the ground, ready to attack at any moment. Seeing that there was still no movement, he turned back and shouted impatiently. Yu immediately understood what Pikachu meant. After a moment's thought, a wicked smile appeared on his face. Pikachu is right, what are you waiting for? Let's go together and beat him to death. Yu's words were like a signal. As soon as he finished speaking, the battle was imminent. Without Yu giving any orders, the Pokémon consciously used their strongest moves. Pikachu's 100,000 volts, Suicune's freeze ray, Gyarados' water cannon, Charmeleon's blaze fueled by raging fire. Let's go too. Let's face this together. Air, having finally recovered from her shyness, looked at her sisters standing on either side, her tone seemingly inquiring but actually filled with determination. Of course. Charmeleon uses Spark, Eevee uses Shadow Ball, Vulpix uses Flame Jet, Milotic uses Water Pillar, Vulpix uses Flame Jet, and Dragonite uses Shadow Ball. The three women, not particularly skilled in Pokémon battles, didn't let their Pokémon do what Yu did, but instead gave their own commands. Finally, as if this wasn't enough, Serena turned her gaze to the stalking panda, pleading with her, "Panda, come help us too. We need your strength, Serena wasn't dismissing the situation anymore. She believed that adding another Pokémon to the battle might improve their chances of victory. Seeing Serena's earnest, pleading look, any ordinary Pokémon would surely agree. Let alone Naughty Panda, who already had a soft spot for Serena. He immediately patted his chest, appearing incredibly confident, as if he could crush even the legendary beasts, not to mention Jengar, with just one move. He completely forgot the trembling he'd shown before facing the wave of evil. Naughty, with a powerful shout, Naughty Panda plunged headfirst into the fray, simultaneously conjuring a shadow ball and hurling it at Jengar. Despite the myriad of flying attacks, Jengar's face remained unfazed by any sign of panic or nervousness, maintaining its signature smile. At the same time, laughter rang out once more. Jengar's figure flashed, instantly disappearing between Yu and the other Pokémon. However, if one were to believe that Jengar had once again become invisible, or perhaps even cloaked in darkness, that was a grave mistake. As Jengar suddenly vanished, the Pokémon instinctively paused their attacks, each nervously observing their surroundings, fearing another sneak attack from Jengar. As one of the four most powerful Pokémon, Gyarados naturally bore the brunt of the attack, charging to the front lines. Furthermore, its immense size allowed it to provide protection and resilience to its companions. Yet, faced with Jengar's sudden disappearance, Gyarados tensed. Without Yu's orders, it even secretly used its hardening ability several times to bolster its defenses and stamina. The reality proved that despite its bulk, Gyarados possessed considerable foresight. Gyarados, wary of its surroundings, felt his vision blur. When he regained his focus, he saw Jengar had suddenly appeared before him, the two Pokémon barely a meter apart. However, faced with this sudden attack, Gyarados' reaction was incredibly swift. Instinctively, it unleashed its Ice Fang. With its icy maw wide open, Gyarados lunged at Jengar. Faced with Gyarados' counterattack, Jengar merely chuckled before swinging its fists. Two fist shadows flew from its shadow-like fists, swiftly striking the oncoming Gyarados. Chapter 454 Shadow Fist. Jengar's two shadow punches were so swift and powerful, like two cannonballs fired from a gun. With a whistling sound, they pierced the air and slammed directly into Gyarados' massive frame. Gyarados, just as the Ice Fangs nearly made contact with Jengar, two muffled thuds echoed, and Gyarados' massive body flew outward, landing heavily in front of a group of Pokémon preparing to provide support. Seeing this, Yu ignored all else and immediately rushed forward to investigate Gyarados' situation. After truly observing Gyarados' condition, Yu gasped. What a powerful shadow punch! It's so powerful. Two fist-sized black marks appeared on Gyarados' tough blue scales. Even ordinary Gyarados possessed extremely high defense, let alone the golden Gyarados that Yu had trained. Perhaps due to being a shiny Pokémon, Yu's Gyarados possessed even more impressive defense. Its golden scales alone gave it the appearance of a golden armor. Coupled with Yu's constant focus on strengthening Gyarados' physique and defense, Yu's golden Gyarados' defense and resilience were considered among the best. After all, to train this Gyarados, Yu would often have his Pokémon gang up on it. Furthermore, Gyarados had secretly used Harden countless times to increase its defense. Therefore, it could be said that Gyarados' defense had almost reached peak strength, perhaps even surpassed it. Yet, even this Gyarados' golden scales now bore two black marks, glaring against its otherwise radiant golden form. However, the battle continued unabated, undeterred by Gyarados' fall. After sending Gyarados flying with two punches, Jengar immediately fled, putting distance between himself and Pikachu and the rest of the Pokémon. This infuriated the more aggressive Pokémon, who, if not for the distance between them, would have leapt for it, just like Gyarados. But as if to vent their anger, Jengar was now a target. Upon seeing Jengar, the Pokémon quickly unleashed their abilities, attacking him with unwavering abandon. As is often the case with such situations, Jengar resorted to his old tricks, abandoning his concealment and swiftly maneuvering for a surprise attack. Even after defeating Gyarados, Jengar seemed unsatisfied and quickly found another opportunity. While the abilities of the pursuers were still catching up, Yu, cloaked in darkness, instantly arrived at his next prey with a few flashes. Jengar's next prey was, of course, Pikachu, who had just been happily discharging his energy. With a previous experience with Gyarados in mind, the Pokémon were even more vigilant in this situation. Stronger Pokémon like Pikachu and Charmeleon, in particular, had already begun charging their abilities in the face of this passive situation, waiting for Jengar to reveal himself so they could quickly counterattack. After confirming that Gyarados was fine, merely incapacitated, Yuyu's attention returned to the battlefield. As Jengar repeated his tactics, Yuyu focused his attention, even channeling his warrior senses to quickly sense Jengar's next move. Despite their preparations, the gap in power remained. As the wicked laughter echoed once more, a figure suddenly flew out from among the Pokémon that had been together. Yuyu, ever aware of the surroundings, was quick to catch the eliminated Pokémon. After seeing the Pokémon clearly, Yuyu breathed a sigh of relief, yet also felt a surge of nervousness. The reason for this nervousness was, of course, that the Pokémon that had been sent flying was his crab. But then there was the heavy relief, because while one of the strongest Pokémon had been eliminated, the rest were still there. This time, however, he was prepared. After Jengar's Shadow Punch knocked Crab into incapacitated form, Pikachu followed suit with an attack. A 100,000 volt bolt seemed to pierce through space, barreling straight towards Jengar. However, Jengar's reaction was incredibly quick. Although he had previously focused on eliminating Crab, the 100,000 volt bolt quickly spun around and dodged. Then, taking advantage of the opportunity to turn around, Jengar decided not to continue defeating them one by one as before, preferring a swift and decisive battle. Instead of running away from the rest of the Pokémon, it charged headfirst into the encirclement. Seeing Jengar's speed, Pikachu's eyes lit up. Not wanting to be outdone, he unleashed his limbs and charged directly at Jengar. His speed was so swift that it left a trail of afterimages, and Pikachu felt a surge of energy. Who was he? He was Pikachu, the speed leader of the team. How could he possibly lose to you? It must be said that Yuyu truly had a knack for training Pokémon. He often tailored simple, practical training programs based on each Pokémon's strengths and characteristics, aiming to fully develop their strengths. However, the devil might be a foot high, but Jengar's strength was ultimately far superior. As the saying goes, in the face of absolute strength, all technical skills were nothing. Fast, truly too fast. If Pikachu's running speed is like a phantom, then Jengar's is practically instantaneous. In the blink of an eye, he appears in front of the still-running Pikachu, his Shadow Fist already ready to strike at any moment to instantly eliminate Pikachu. Chapter 455 Volt Attack. Jengar's strength was formidable, but it faced Pikachu, and nothing was impossible for it. If Yuyu was the protagonist among humans, then Pikachu was the protagonist among Pokémon. While the opponent's strength was formidable, it was truly remarkable to easily and effortlessly defeat Pikachu. Facing Jengar, who was practically on the verge of a Shadow Fist, Pikachu suddenly erupted in lightning. In a split second, his entire body was engulfed in a blanket of lightning. Pikachu had fought countless battles with Yuyu, not to mention hundreds of them. This wasn't his first time facing Ghost-type Pokémon, so he knew the ropes. Therefore, facing a head-on clash with Jengar, Pikachu instantly switched from his lightning-fast run to Volt Attack. After all, Lightning Flash is a physical attack, while Volt Attack not only offers physical damage but also special attacks, making it incredibly powerful. However, while Volt Attack is incredibly powerful, the damage it inflicts upon its own body after repeated use is also significant. It's effectively a skill that injures both the attacker and the player. This is why Pikachu usually uses 100,000 volts instead of the more powerful Volt Attack. As expected, even a powerful creature like Jengar was caught off guard by Pikachu's sudden change in ability. While Jengar's reaction was incredibly quick, it still collided directly with Pikachu. At that moment of impact, Pikachu was met with a solid blow from Jengar's Shadow Fist, sending its petite body flying backwards and slamming into the following Pokémon. Yuyu, constantly watching the battle unfold, saw Pikachu's body flying backwards. With swift movements, he rushed forward to catch it. However, the force radiating from Pikachu is simply too immense. Even with his foresight, Yuyu was still thrown forward, landing heavily on a tree not far behind. With a muffled thud, the recoil sent Yuyu sliding down the trunk and crashing to the ground. Even though Yuyu had been prepared, having previously cast a shield of internal energy around him, a trace of blood still flowed from the corner of his mouth. Yuyu, seeing Yuyu and Pikachu flying together, crashing into the tree with a resounding crash, Serena and the other two screamed involuntarily, then hurried towards Yuyu and Pikachu, their eyes filled with worry. Meanwhile, Serena and the other two were worried about Yu and Pikachu. Meanwhile, Jengar, while having knocked Pikachu away, wasn't in a good state. If Yu had observed Jengar more closely, he would have noticed arcs of electricity pulsing across its surface. With each flash of lightning, Jengar's previously swift speed would often pause. This was even more pronounced against a backdrop of darkness. As Jengar moved, yellow arcs of electricity danced through the dark, empty air, creating an eerie, yet striking effect. Ugh. Ahem, I'm fine. Yu felt the impact, and his previously calm heart began to race, but he quickly suppressed it. He began to worry about Pikachu's condition. While he wasn't a professional Pokémon doctor, he was still a doctor after all. After a quick check on Pikachu, seeing that it was only incapacitated, much like Gyarados, he breathed a sigh of relief. How can you be alright? You're bleeding. Seeing Yu finally stop, Serena became incredibly agitated. Worried about Ayumi's condition, tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. The other two women didn't say anything. But a few drops of Pokémon could be clearly seen glinting in their gazes towards Yu. These are just minor injuries, don't worry, Yu whispered, his voice devoid of any hint of weakness. As for whether or not they were alright, only Yu knew. With Xiaoxi's help, Yu finally stood up. As Ayumi stood up, the tree behind him was revealed. Visible cracks, like a spiderweb, covered the tree. Xiaoxu, I'll leave Pikachu in your care for now. I'll be right back. The three women's expressions changed at this, but before they could say anything, Yu simply handed Pikachu to Xiaoxu and turned his attention back to the battle. Jengar once again dodged Charmeleon's jets of fire with a strange agility. Just as he was about to advance and launch another close-range attack, he saw arcs of electricity pulsing through the air. Suddenly, Jengar appeared in the empty space ahead, a pained expression on its face and a slight stiffness in its movements. Charmeleon, a veteran of battle, naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity and launched another jet of fire. However, Jengar's reaction was incredibly quick. After the initial numbness and stiffness, he skillfully sidestepped and dodged the jets of fire. After witnessing the scene, Yu wasn't disappointed that Charmeleon's ability hadn't hit Jengar. Instead, a look of joy filled his face. He had seen the entire scene unfold before his eyes. He was especially delighted after seeing the arcs of electricity flashing across Jengar's body. How could he not be delighted? No matter how powerful a Pokémon is, unless they possess abilities that grant immunity or require the help of special immunity medication, they will struggle when faced with any of the three physical conditions, and in some cases, even feel despair. Chapter 456 Luck. Paralysis, poisoning, burns, sleep, confusion, these are all special conditions that can occur during combat. As mentioned earlier, unless you possess the skills to mitigate these conditions, even if you're a legendary Pokémon, or even a champion-level powerhouse, you'll be consumed to death by these side effects if you don't mitigate them. After all, this doesn't depend on your strength. If it's the first three conditions, and the power gap between the two Pokémon is significant, you can rely on an instant kill to avoid being on the defensive. However, if the Pokémon are evenly matched and lack the aforementioned mitigations, then congratulations. If you protract the battle, you'll be completely defeated. However, Pokémon battles are ultimately full of uncertainties. Both the trainer's command and the Pokémon's own strength are crucial. The arcs of electricity flickering around Jengar's body indicate the paralysis has begun to take effect. This is why Yu seemed particularly excited. Perhaps he wasn't yet ready to defeat Jengar, but the upcoming battles should at least be easier. Yu thought so, but the following scene shattered his conviction. Although the attacking force had lost two powerful elements, Pikachu and Gyarados, it still couldn't stop the Pokémon's relentless attack. Skills continued to crisscross the sky, especially those generated near Jengar. After all, both Charmeleon and Suicune were intently targeting Jengar. But no matter what, the toothless tiger still had its might. Furthermore, Jengar wasn't toothless, he had simply been distracted for a moment. Faced with a seemingly unstoppable onslaught, Jengar's once playful face finally showed a rare hint of impatience. The anger in his eyes deepened as he looked at the less powerful Pokémon, such as Buzzbot and Flycatcher. After all, Suicune and Charmeleon were constantly attacking him. While their strength was somewhat inferior, they were still barely acceptable. But what's wrong with you little bastards? I was already giving you a little face by letting you play tricks on me a few times before, and now you're actually pushing it even further. You really think I'm Hello Kitty? Perhaps driven by this psychological pressure, Jengar launched his attack right after him, matched only by his speed. As Jengar's figure continuously flashed and appeared, the weaker Pokémon were gradually rendered incapable of combat. Seeing this, Yu felt an inexplicable surge of anxiety. Although the Buzzbot group of Pokémon were a bit weaker, he couldn't just let them be eliminated one by one. The principle of lips and teeth are cold aside, if the weaker Pokémon were eliminated, Charmeleon and Suicune would have to face Jengar head-on. While these weaker Pokémon wouldn't be able to turn the tide, at least they could help share the attack's burden, perhaps even distract Jengar's attention, giving the more powerful Pokémon a chance to recover. While this may sound somewhat unkind, Yu had no other choice at the moment. Charmeleon, use Flame Jet. Suicune, use Freeze Beam. You two should alternate your abilities, supporting each other. Pillars of ice and fire launched simultaneously from two directions, completely blocking Jengar's escape route. If Jengar wanted to launch another attack, he would have to withstand both attacks head-on. But who was Jengar? He was a being many levels above the rest of the Pokémon present. The word retreat simply didn't exist in his vocabulary. It was a joke. If he retreated in the face of something he considered little more than trash, how could he maintain his dignity? Thus, he instantly unleashed a wave of evil and a shadow ball, bombarding the flame jet and freeze beam that were coming his way without pause. Perhaps it was due to his multitasking, or perhaps it was due to the exhaustion from the series of attacks. A wave of evil that would have required the combined efforts of a large group of Pokémon to destroy, upon contact with a jet of flame, dissipated into the air with a bang. The same thing happened with Freeze Beam and Shadow Ball. The brief window between these two pincer attacks was enough for Jengar to break free and launch another swift attack. However, perhaps having already vented his anger, Jengar's targets this time were the only two remaining main forces. Facing Jengar's renewed attack from its abode, they acted in perfect harmony. Charmeleon and Suicune didn't use their skills to stop or harass. They simply waited quietly for Jengar's arrival, yet in perfect harmony, they simultaneously charged up melee attacks. A tail covered in jade-colored dragon scales, a mouth emitting a wisp of ice fang. It was truly prepared, waiting for Jengar's arrival. Perhaps they were just tired of playing. Jengar's movements were remarkably swift this time, and its gestures, indicating it was ready to strike left and right, suggested it was eager to end the fight quickly. However, neither Yu, Charmeleon, or Suicune were prepared to let this go so easily. Just beating them up and then running away, how could they possibly be? They had never suffered such a heavy loss since their journey began. While their current strength was no match for Jengar, both Pokémon, determined to not let Jengar off easily, even if it meant losing their combat power, had completely abandoned their aggressive intent. I wonder if it was heaven on Yu's side, but as Jengar appeared and prepared to unleash a shadow punch with each of its two hands, arcs of electricity suddenly flickered and pulsed around it. Its movements were so sharp that they paused visibly. Oh, God help me. I'm paralyzed at this very moment. Charmeleon, Suicune, what are you two still standing there for? Hurry up, you idiots who don't take advantage of an opportunity, Yu's roar echoed through the night sky. Chapter 457 Injured. Lizasu. The two Pokémon reacted incredibly quickly, springing into action the moment Yu finished speaking. Both Charmeleon and Suicune held malicious intent in their eyes. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, Charmeleon and Suicune would have wanted to imitate the TV displays of finger pressing and smirking, the tangible manifestations of malicious intent. Because Dragon Tail and Ice Fang both possess attributes, they wouldn't miss when hitting Jengar. Charmeleon rushed forward first, unleashing Dragon Tail. Suicune was only a step behind, and Ice Fang followed with a relentless bite into Jengar's body. Perhaps luck was truly in their element at this moment, as even after both Pokémon had used their respective abilities on Jengar, the paralysis effect persisted. Therefore, after unleashing Dragon Tail, it seemed as if that wasn't enough. Charmeleon immediately disregarded the question of melee or ranged combat, launching a direct, close-range fire jet, its impact guaranteed to hit Jengar. Jengar, paralyzed and unable to move, felt a flaming sensation all over his body, as if being roasted on fire. But then his thoughts shifted again, as Suicune's ice fangs bit him once again, creating a sensation like being frozen by millennia of ice. Then, the sensation of being roasted returned, and then, frozen again. This cycle repeated several times, Jengar experiencing both ice and fire to its fullest. Perhaps they were too carried away, But while Jengar was paralyzed and unable to move, both Charmeleon and Suicune subconsciously treated him like a punching bag. They began to vent their anger on him, rubbing the very punching bag that had just bullied them. Although the paralysis lasted only a short moment, Jengar had truly experienced the true power of a beating. But as the saying goes, fortunes change. As Charmeleon's jets of fire descended, Jengar discovered he could move. This discovery instantly overwhelmed Jengar, who let out a scream. And before Charmeleon could react, a shadow ball, unleashed with all his might, instantly struck. Charmeleon, already weakened by its fierce fire ability, instantly lost its combat capability. Jengar, observing this, smiled with relief. After all, Charmeleon had been the most ferocious in those moments. After fully recovering, Suicune was the only remaining mainstay, still standing in the middle of the field. This time, seemingly having learned his lesson, Jengar didn't dare to linger. After all, he didn't want to repeat the previous beating. Therefore, facing Suicune, Jengar's sole remaining Pokémon and the last one Jengar showed any interest in, Jengar unleashed a Shadow Fist without hesitation. With the force of a space-shattering force, it blasted straight at Suicune, determined to completely disable him with a single blow. After all, after playing for so long, he couldn't let his master wait impatiently, could he? Otherwise, how would he have the chance to secretly entertain himself while completing his master's tasks? Under the pretext of caring for his own future happiness and returning to his master as soon as possible, Jengar's Shadow Fist was a full-throttle attack, but after the previous blow, it was unclear how much stamina Jengar had left. After Charmeleon was sent flying, Suicune, already on guard, faced the Shadow Ball attack and erected a wall of ice along the path ahead for defense. While Suicune's ice wall might have been effective against other attacks, it was truly awkward against Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch, after all, was a skill with a 100% chance of success. Therefore, facing the chilling ice wall of Freeze Ray, Shadow Punch lived up to its name. Like a shadow, it passed through the Freeze Ray's ice wall, fiercely slamming into Suicune behind it. Suicune, completely unprepared, was sent flying by Shadow Ball. Then, Yu, quick-witted, dove again, using himself as a cushion to cushion Suicune's impact and prevent him from taking too much damage. However, due to the sheer force of the attack, Yu and Suicune were slammed back into the tree he had already struck. This time, however, the situation looked quite disastrous. Perhaps it was because he had already spun around once before, or perhaps it was because the power of Shadow Punch was simply too overwhelming. Yu and Suicune collided with each other, and the already cracked, spiderweb-like tree trunk snapped instantly. The crash of the falling tree instantly brought Az and his three daughters, who had been stunned by the suddenness of the incident, back to their senses. The next moment, three high-pitched screams echoed through the darkness. As if startled by the three screams, the clouds that had been lingering above gradually parted, revealing the large, round moon. As the clouds dispersed, the moonlight slowly poured down on Yu and Suicune. This allowed Serena and the other two to get a clear look at Yu. It was undeniable that after rescuing and protecting Pokémon one after another, Yu looked utterly dejected. His robe, once a traditional Chinese scholar's robe, was now covered in dust and even torn in several places. What worried Xiaoxia and the other two most was Yu's now completely pale face, the glaring crimson at the corners of his mouth. The first time he'd encountered Pikachu, Yu might have been able to withstand it. But this time against Suicune, Yu couldn't quite hold his own. After all, that was a near-champion-level Jengar Shadow Fist. If it happened again, Yu would likely be completely defeated. Chapter 458 changes again. Yu, Serena and the other two girls hurried over, their faces bare of concern and worry. Even Air, the strongest of the three, had tears welling in her beautiful eyes, not to mention the two more delicate women. Xiaozhi was about to pull some medicine from her backpack to treat Yu, but Yu stopped her. Before they could say anything, Yu spoke first. I'm fine, don't worry. As if to convince the three girls, Yu strained his lips with some effort, but perhaps because of the severity of his injuries, he bared his teeth again. His smile turned into a mixture of laughter and tears. You say it's okay? Look, there's even more blood this time. Serena was almost crying out of Yu's anxiety, her voice tinged with sobs. Compared to Serena's panic and Xiaoxia's frantic attempts to grab the first aid kit, Air was the calmest. She pulled her handkerchief from her tracksuit pocket and carefully wiped the blood from Yu's mouth. as if afraid of hurting Yu. Air was incredibly gentle. Tears flickered in her eyes, but a resoluteness shone through, making her look endearing. This time, however, Yu didn't stare blankly, as he was truly distressed. Pikachu's inner turmoil had been forcibly calmed by him the previous time, but after this collision, it was completely shattered, and he felt a surge of air coursing through his body. Suddenly, Yu felt a movement in his arms. Looking down, he saw Suicune struggling to escape. It seemed that Yu's flying pads were quite useful. Suicune hadn't lost his fighting ability. However, his current condition wasn't much better, his wobbly body giving the impression of falling at any moment. After trembling and crawling out of Yu's arms, Suicune looked at his trainer, whimpering softly, his eyes filled with worry. Damn, it really hurts. After muttering a curse to himself, Yu hurriedly pulled out a healing pill from his storage room and tossed it into his mouth. He didn't even flirt with her, simply chewing it hastily for a few times. With Xiaoxi's help, Yu stood up again, though his steps were a little unsteady. Seeing this, Suicune, not caring about his own still weak body, rushed to Yu's side, using his own body to support his trainer. And with Suicune's support, somehow, he was able to. Yu instinctively let go of Xiaoxi's support. Man and pet supported each other, stumbling and swaying. But if anyone were standing before Yu or Suicune at that moment, they would have clearly seen the determination gleaming in their eyes. Though they couldn't see Yu's eyes, Serena and the other two, watching from behind and to the side, could sense an unprecedented resolve within these two frail bodies. They would fight to the bitter end, even if only for a breath. This scene reminded Serena of a passionate, childish line from anime she watched as a child, born to fight, never to rest until death, perhaps influenced by the resolve of this man and pet, or perhaps the Pokémon in Yu's clutches. Air and the others wanted to intervene, but they didn't move a step. They simply stared blankly at the two figures that were nearly syncing up. Perhaps it still held a sliver of interest, or perhaps it was because it had already eliminated all its main forces, leaving no Pokémon left to stop or challenge it. Jengar, at this moment, seemed remarkably relaxed. Unconcealed, he grinned non-stop, a sight that made the other Pokémon grit their teeth. Skill after skill lashed out at Jengar without stopping. However, the disparity in power ultimately left the Pokémon's skills in vain. Jengar's laughter continued, as if mocking the Pokémon's incompetence. But as Jengar scoffed, a dark shadow barreled towards its face at breakneck speed. Instantly, Jengar, still laughing heartily, was drenched. Furthermore, the immense force sent the defenseless Jengar flying. He stopped looking down on me. Our battle isn't over yet, Jengar, Yu's voice rang out. Though still a little weak, it was surprisingly powerful at this moment. Water responding to his trainer's call, Suicune, unwilling to be outdone, displayed the might of a legendary beast. At the same time, as if by an invisible connection, Yu and Suicune were connected, as if their minds were connected. This feeling again. I still don't understand why, but this feeling of power is truly amazing. Feeling the sudden surge of power from his body, Yu's face was filled with wonder, his eyes constantly scanning his hands, as if adapting to this strange yet familiar power that belonged to him. Water once again, his body enveloped by water, Suicune's face was filled with curiosity and excitement as he felt the power flowing endlessly from it. Although this wasn't the first time Yu and Suicune had experienced this, each time it felt new and surprising. However, just as Yu and Suicune were experiencing the changes in each other, they didn't realize that within Yu's storage space, there wasn't just a brilliant light. The two rays of light illuminated the previously dark space within the storage ring, making it as bright as daylight. Furthermore, there was a connection between the two rays of light, with the colorful threads of light intertwining with one another. It was a tangled mess, impossible to separate. Following the source of the two rays of light, it was revealed that they were emitted from two marble-sized stones. However, the energy generated by the two stones, after initially operating independently, eventually merged together. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 459 Connected. In a corner of the storage space, the energy generated by two glowing stones, after initially acting independently, finally merged together. If one hadn't seen it with one's own eyes, One might have felt it was simply a single stone, a single stream of energy, undifferentiated. However, Yu was unaware of these changes. Now, whether it was Yu, Suicune, or the other Pokémon, all eyes were fixed on Jengar, who had regained his feet. He tilted his head, seemingly puzzled as to why Suicune hadn't lost his shock ability. But after a brief moment of confusion, anger welled up within him. Who had he just laughed at? How dare they attack him from behind? So, don't blame them for being rude. Jengar didn't hide himself as he had initially, but instead floated above him. The moonlight illuminated his movements, making them clearly visible. Jengar's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a strange and dangerous aura, like that of a ghost. Well, strictly speaking, Jengar is still just a ghost. But facing a Jengar of such imposing power? Yu and Suicune didn't flinch, confronting each other. The evening breeze rustled the leaves around them. The grass seemed to bend under the pressure. However, neither side showed any interest in taking the initiative, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward, a dull atmosphere tinged with a hint of awkwardness. As if a major battle was about to break out, the weaker Pokémon were tactful this time and refrained from harassing Jengar. Instead, they all retreated to Serena and the other two, their eyes filled with tension as they watched the imminent battle. Meanwhile, after a brief rest, the three main Pokémon, Pikachu, Charmeleon, and Gyarados, had awakened. However, they were only awake and conscious. Rejoining the fray at this point would be a stretch. As a result, the three previously competitive Pokémon obediently joined the crowd. After all, they might playfully play along, but in such a crucial situation, they wouldn't bother each other or become a burden. After all, only your opponent truly understands you. The tense atmosphere in the arena continued, with both sides staring at each other. However, to the uninformed, this was nothing more than a stare-down. Ultimately, Yu and Suicune, unable to bear it any longer, launched the first attack. After all, Yu and Suicune's special state wasn't without a time limit. In just a few moments, beads of sweat began to trickle down their cheeks. And Yu and the others had no idea how long this state would last. Therefore, with the idea of striking first and then suffering later, Yu decisively let Suicune launch the first attack. Sailor, use Freeze Beam, an icy blue energy beam condensed and shot directly from Suicune's water. Jeng facing Suicune, who had launched the first attack, Jengar let out a smug grin. Facing the menacing, approaching Freeze Beam, Jengar refused to retreat, condensing a wave of darkness. Although Suicune and his trainer had experienced a boost in both strength and speed due to this special state, Jengar was still slightly outmatched against Jengar. After the darkness wave collided completely with a Freeze Beam, it still had enough strength to blast towards Suicune. However, its power and speed were now less than 1/10 of their original strength, and Suicune easily dodged it. Tisk. It seems even in this state, the power gap between the two can't be bridged. Yu frowned, feeling deeply uneasy. You have to understand that in this special situation with Suicune, not to mention Suicune's direct experience, Yu alone could feel the sudden surge of powerful strength within his body. It's a state. It really feels like being on drugs. Once again feeling the changes within his body, Yu decided to use this opportunity to carefully study the nature of this transformation in himself and Suicune. After all, while this phenomenon had occurred before, it had always lasted only briefly. This time, however, Yu had a feeling that this state between him and Suicune would last longer. However, in this situation, Yu had little time or opportunity to reflect. Jengar, intent on pressing his advantage, had already launched another attack. Jengar condensed a barrage of shadow balls and hurled them at Suicune, but Suicune's speed was no slouch, nimbly dodging them all. Don't just sit there and wait for death when you encounter something, the slogan shouted by a certain anime character with each transformation echoed in Yu's mind. Suicune, use water cannon to retaliate. Suicune, quickly dodge, then use freeze ray. Yu issued orders one after another in a methodical and swift manner. After another exchange of skills, the two Pokémon retreated. The powerful Jengar remained unscathed. Suicune, already on the verge of losing his fighting ability, was the one who was released. After a series of intense battles, his face remained expressionless, but his aura was already weakening. However, a last vestige of determination compelled Suicune to grit his teeth and persevere. And then, perhaps because of his previous intense tension, he suddenly relaxed. A wave of dizziness washed over Yu like a tide. After shaking his head, which was trembling, Yu quickly forced himself to steady himself, preventing a sudden fall. He was also perplexed. Even if he had been concentrating, he shouldn't have felt this dizzy after suddenly relaxing. And this dizziness came without warning, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. It was as if he could sense Suicune's current physical condition. Chapter 460 The End of the Battle. After shaking his dizzy head once more, Yu forced himself to focus and looked across at Jengar, who was gazing at him with a dazed expression. Jengar's face was filled with curiosity, perhaps out of novelty or amusement. Gazing at the near godlike synchronization between the person and their pet not far in front of him, Jengar was like an outsider, watching with rapt interest. At this moment, both Suicune and Yu were in a profoundly mysterious state. They could sense the changes in their own condition, especially the subtle pain emanating from Suicune. Yu couldn't help but gasp. Yet, despite this, Yu felt his bond with Suicune deepen. In this state, Suicune and Yu could easily communicate telepathically, as long as the details weren't too complex. Perhaps due to their deeper bond, the water mass that had originally enveloped Suicune gradually revealed its true form. After forcing himself to shake his head once more, Yu suddenly had an idea. He wanted to take out a few more healing pills from the storage ring to see if he could transfer some of the effects to Suicune through himself. Since Suicune and I can share our senses and withstand damage together in this special state, perhaps this kind of shared healing could actually work. Having made up his mind, he immediately went to work. Yu immediately divided a small part of his mind and began to search the storage ring for healing pills. However, as soon as he sank into the storage ring, he was blinded by the dazzling light. This sudden change frightened Yu so much that he immediately withdrew from the storage ring and even rubbed his eyes in disbelief. What was going on? Was the storage room broken again? No. Although the entire storage ring was awash in light, for a brief moment, Yu could indeed sense the gentle warmth that permeated it. Oh my goodness! Could my storage ring contain something truly remarkable? As soon as this thought occurred to him, Yu's mind spiraled out of control, a deluge of wild thoughts flooding his mind. But now, he wasn't thinking about these things, he would have to wait until later to examine them more closely. Having learned his lesson, Yu no longer focused his attention on the storage ring. Instead, he relied on his mental map of the healing pills' locations within. His usual practice of organizing the ring's contents came into play. He quickly fumbled for a healing pill and, without even glancing at it, tossed it into his mouth. As the pill entered his stomach, Yu felt a gentle medicinal power flow through his limbs, warming him to the touch, as if soaking in a hot spring. However, the healing elixir's effect was only temporary. As the warm feeling faded, a faint pain returned, reigniting the pain that had previously subsided. Yu gasped, feeling the medicinal power within his body gradually dissipate. While it had indeed activated the healing process, the healing speed was nowhere near the speed of the pain. But think about it. Although, at this moment, in this unique state, Yu and Suicune felt as if they had become one, they were ultimately not the same person, nor did they share the same carrier. While in this state, one could sense the other's injuries, even creating a sense of shared fate. That didn't mean that if one recovered, the other would also recover. After all, if the other recovered, it would only be a single healing. Yu felt a sense of relief at this thought, but even if he tried, he couldn't change the crisis before him. Even though he and Suicune had briefly undergone a transformation, they still couldn't make a dent in the face of sheer power. He forced himself to steady himself, struggling with his eyelids. Though his vision was blurry, he watched Jengar, who was observing him and Suicune with curiosity. His expression was nonchalant and full of curiosity, as if he didn't take Yu and Suicune, who were currently in unprecedented peak form, seriously. Suddenly, the pride of being a Grandmaster ignited Yu's last remaining indomitable spirit. Go on laughing. Suicune, just use water cannon. Suicune, in this special state, could instantly sense his trainer's thoughts. Without hesitation, he unleashed a powerful water cannon, blasting Jengar fiercely. The water cannon, in this state, was immensely powerful. Even though Suicune was now utterly exhausted, its use was still formidable. Compared to the water cannon Suicune unleashed before this special state, this one spun in a spiral. The impact was more powerful, and the air resistance was also reduced. But Jengar, seemingly tired of playing, remained playful despite Suicune's more powerful and swift water cannon. However, as the water cannon drew closer, Jengar gradually faded, blending into the black night sky. The water cannon blasted fiercely in Jenger's direction. But now, nothing was visible. The water cannon blasted out with a piercing sound. Just as it was about to reach Jenger vanished. The water cannon finally struck a large tree, signaling its end. The tree, at least as thick as a thigh, collapsed upon impact, startling some bird Pokemon that had been resting. Jeng, ha ha ha, I had so much fun today. You're all so good, but we're pressed for time today. We'll continue next time. At that moment, Jenger's excited and joyful laughter echoed through the empty night sky. The Pikachus, now conscious, gnashed their teeth, wishing they could charge forward and fight him for 300 rounds again. This was truly too much of a bully. Could he just do whatever he wanted just because he was so powerful? Chapter 461 Inquiry. Seeing Jenger's sudden disappearance and hearing the slightly excited laughter beside him, Yu, the trainer, didn't react at all, but rather felt relieved. After all, the language gap was a major issue. Suicune, on the other hand, wasn't in the same good spirits as his trainer. Seeing his water cannon, which could be considered his strongest attack, dodged, and especially hearing Jenger's laughter, which only added fuel to the fire, Suicune lost his composure. When had his dignity as a divine beast ever been so rubbed against the ground? While the gap between the two was enormous, Suicune's defeat was understandable. But at this moment, Suicune was obsessed with a single point. The more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He almost lost control, but in the end, amidst the intense internal struggle, his body gave way and he fainted, falling to the ground. Suicune's collapse wasn't a big deal. The most important thing was that he and Yu still had a special connection. Suicune fainted. Yu felt his vision go black, and then all the injuries he had been suppressing surged back. His eyes rolled back, and Yu collapsed to the ground, unable to fight. In the moments before he passed out, he could still hear the anxious, concerned cries of Serena and the other two, as well as the approaching figure. As Yu fell, he and Suicune, who had a special bond, felt as if something had separated. Then, enveloped in a soft light, Suicune reappeared in its original form. Meanwhile, Serena and the other two, along with their Pokémon, worried about Yu and Suicune's unconsciousness. Across the forest, Shinjiro remained, leaning against a tree with his arms folded, quietly awaiting Jenger's return. Seeing their leader still standing, the S organization's minions naturally didn't dare leave first, instead standing respectfully around Shinjiro. As if out of boredom, Shinosuke's fingers rhythmically tapped the bark. As time went by, the rhythm of his tapping became increasingly rapid. There was nothing he could do. It was Shinosuke's Jenger's playful nature. While his Jenger hadn't been subjected to the same repressive treatment as other Pokémon in the evil organization, Jenger still didn't dare to express himself, constantly suppressing his instincts. This was a rare opportunity for Shinosuke to send it out on a solo mission, so it naturally had to take advantage of the opportunity to go wild. While Pikachu and other Pokémon weren't as powerful as Jenger's insatiable desire for fun was unstoppable. To satisfy his mischief, he resorted to any means necessary. This ultimately delayed Jenger's progress, turning a mere few minutes of searching into a sneak attack. "Hey, who's that? Come over here. It's already 10 o'clock. Glancing at the gradually clearing moon in the sky, Shinosuke raised his hand and casually pointed at a member of the S organization, asking immediately. After an initial moment of daze, the member of the S organization who was pointed at became trembling. After glancing at the arm with a watch on it, the member carefully reported the time. Nodding indifferently, Shinosuke, having received the answer he wanted, ignored the members around him, continuing to look up at the moonlight in the sky. Has it already been half an hour? What the hell is that Jenger doing? A 5-minute task has taken so long. I'm going to give him a good beating when he gets back. Shinosuke was mentally pondering how to deal with Jenger. A dark shadow flashed by, and a slightly sinister laugh rang out, and Jenger had returned to Shinosuke's side. Upon seeing Jenger, Shinji's face flared, and he immediately raised his fist, ready to deliver a brutal blow. However, physical attacks were ineffective against ghost-type Pokémon. Before he could react, Shinji nearly stumbled, embarrassing himself in front of his subordinates. Naturally, the surrounding S organization members also witnessed the scene, but due to their status, they all bowed their heads, pretending not to notice. Jenger, on the other hand, showed no restraint. Seeing his trainer suffer a setback, he burst into laughter. Shinji was furious, but at a loss for what to do with Jengar, so he patiently asked, "Hey, you've been out for so long. What were you doing? I asked you to investigate someone, but why did it take so long?" Seeing that he had finally gotten to the point, Jengar, for once, became serious, his face stern and serious. As if afraid his trainer wouldn't understand, Jengar even began to dance with joy. Shinizuke read it carefully, but the more he read, the more confused he became. In the end, he could only wave his hand impatiently. Okay, stop. What are you wandering around for? I'm getting dizzy." Seeing Jengar finally quiet down, Shinizuke began to sort out what he had said to the trainer. Although there was a language gap between Pokemon and trainers, with time and familiarity, it was possible to understand a Pokemon's basic meaning. "Jengar, if I understand what you're saying correctly, then I probably know it all. But let me verify it again. If I'm right, just nod." Shinizuke then asked Jengar a second time to confirm the accuracy of his information. Jengar didn't act tricky again, but nodded his head like a good child. "So, Jengar, what are you saying? You have found the person in Pokemon who had previously destroyed our organization's plan. Moreover, in order to test his strength, you even had a battle with him. And in the end, after a hard fight, you finally defeated that group of Pokemon. And in order to show how powerful you are, you beat them up before leaving, and beat them so hard that they knelt down and begged for mercy and screamed." He rubbed his brows. Why did Shinjiro not believe it so much? Chapter 462 Conspiracy. Watching Jengar, still rambling seriously, Shinizuke felt a surge of headache. Though he didn't understand Pokemon language, his guesses were pretty close after this exchange. He might have been okay up front, but why did it become increasingly fake later on? And what about the whole battle with the other party? He made it sound like he was formidable against a group of enemies, but what about that faint arc of electricity flickering around him right now? Ugh. This time, Jengar was alright. He was just too concerned with appearances and fun. With a sigh of frustration, Shinizuke suddenly said solemnly, Alright. I don't care if you beat them to their knees or if you're beaten to them. Don't bother causing trouble for others from now on. For the time being, you all need to behave yourself. This is a critical moment for the organization, and I don't want any complications. Anyone who disobeys will understand the consequences. The first part of his words was directed at Jengar. As for the latter part of his words, it was a warning to his new followers. Even now, Shinizuke still had some doubts about Jengar's message. After all, while Shinizuke was extremely confident in his Jengar, if they dared to provoke the S organization, they were no ordinary force. It was a turbulent time within the organization, and with a mindset of less trouble is worse than more trouble, Shinizuke was truly overthinking it this time. The next morning, the woodland where Yu and the others were was bustling with activity, completely belying the memory of the battle from the previous day. Perhaps due to the severity of the previous day's injuries, or perhaps simply due to sheer exhaustion, Yu rarely woke up early to practice martial arts. However, by this time, Pikachu and the other Pokemon had developed a certain level of self-discipline, and Yu had already arranged their training schedules. Therefore, without their trainer's supervision, the Pikachus, having recuperated overnight, were now sweating profusely in their special training. Yu also emerged from a tent at this time, squinting up at the sun, already high in the sky. Listening to the sounds of Pikachu and the others training nearby, Yu smiled faintly. Yu, you're finally awake. It's rare to see you stay up so late. Serena approached with a smile, holding a bag of Pokemon food. What time is it now? Yu replied with a smile, then asked. Exactly 8 o'clock, Serena said, checking her watch. Upon hearing the time, Yu patted his head lightly for no apparent reason. I didn't expect being in that special situation with Suicune would be so exhausting. By the way, how's Suicune doing now? Don't worry. Suicune woke up a long time ago, finished his morning exercises, and is now accompanying Air to do the laundry. Oh, I see. Then, as if they had run out of topics to discuss, a moment of silence fell between the two of them. I'm sorry. After a brief silence, Yu finally spoke first. Serena pursed her cheeks, looking at Yu in confusion, unsure of his sudden words. After gathering his words, Yu finally looked up at Serena, who now looked rather endearing. Because of me, your birthday party couldn't happen. I'm truly sorry. Yesterday's chaotic battle had destroyed the previously planned venues. After all, facing Jengar's overwhelming power, How could Pikachu and the others have the energy to care for them? So, after the battle, the tents they were camping in were spared, which was already a good thing. Furthermore, with Yu and Suicune subsequently unconscious, Serena's birthday party hadn't even been held. After all, they still needed to assign someone to take care of Yu and Suicune. After all, while there were Pokémon centers everywhere, this was in the middle of nowhere, and finding one was no easy task. Well, it's okay. If you hadn't reminded me, Yu, I would have forgotten. Serena smiled sweetly, and as if to comfort Yu, she waved her hand dismissively. Yu wanted to say something else, but Serena hurried forward a few steps, not giving him the slightest chance. As if she felt she had reached a safe distance, Serena turned around, clasped her hands behind her, and leaned forward slightly. Don't worry too much about it. After all, I'm already very happy that you received your birthday present. Okay, I'll definitely make it up for you sometime. Although Yu wanted to say something more, Serena's bright smile made him say only this. Serena's smile widened after hearing this. Well, in that case, after breakfast, let's pack up and continue our journey, aiming to reach Fangshou Town before sunset. I'll definitely accompany you on a tour of the town, so we can all relax together. Okay, then I'll go talk to Air and Xiaoxia now. Two flowers bloom, each with its own beauty. At this moment, in a darkened room, two people sat facing each other. Because of the clutter, their faces couldn't be clearly seen. Xiu Tucker, tell me, there's no need to come here for no reason. What's your purpose? One of them asked, his voice extremely cold and emotionless. Oh, my dear. Tokukura. You're as cold as ever. I thought we'd sit down and have a good chat, but you've really disappointed me. Another voice, speaking in a foreign accent, spoke with a casual air. Tell me, what are the orders from above? If you don't tell me, I'll go ask them myself. Although Taku's face couldn't be seen clearly, his voice clearly showed his impatience. Oh my. How indifferent. Xiu Tucker remained indifferent, as if he hadn't heard the impatience in Taku's words. Chapter 463 Arrival. Pa. The sound of a palm slapping against the desktop suddenly resounded throughout the sealed room. Though the dim light obscured Taku's expression, his actions revealed his endurance was at its limit. Catcha, catcha. As Taku's slaps landed, the hard marble tea table creaked with a series of crisp, undulating sounds. If someone had turned on the lights in the darkened room, they would have clearly seen the marble surface, now covered in a web of spider webs. Taku's palm was practically embedded in it. Wow. Taku. I didn't expect your skills to improve after not seeing you for so long, Xiu Tucker exclaimed in surprise, his vision unaffected by the darkness. You should be able to speak now, right? He ignored Xiu Tucker's surprise, her tone unblinking, her anger undetectable. However, Xiu Tucker disagreed, his eyes occasionally glancing at the marble tabletop. Alright, isn't that enough? You have to be so violent? It would be terrible if we damaged the flowers and plants. Xiu Tucker raised his hands in surrender and chuckled. But his words lost their previous frivolous tone. Though the room was dark, Xiu Tucker could still sense a pair of sharp eyes fixed on him. It was as if he said one more word, the other party would immediately turn rude. However, Taku's intimidation was effective. Xiu Tucker immediately shut up and quickly adjusted his attitude. Xiu Tucker was deeply reluctant. What kind of person was this? He actually cared about my words. But the situation was stronger than him. You could say you were inferior to them. After some arguing, Xiu Tucker slowly explained the purpose of his visit to Taku. You've heard of the exchange conference, right? Exchange conference? At the sound of those three words, Taku's heart fluttered. As if gaining interest, he repeated it again. From the look of it, you probably don't know. Hey, I'm not saying anything. Besides training Pokemon and practicing martial arts, you should at least learn more about what's going on outside. I don't have time. Not everyone is like you. Training Pokemon and practicing martial arts are inherently difficult to balance, Tokukura rarely explained, then his eyes narrowed again. Are you going to say anything more? You're talking too much nonsense. Xiu Tucker, who was about to complain a little more, was like a cynic being strangled. After a wry laugh, he hurriedly continued. The task assigned this time is related to this exchange meeting. And an exchange meeting, as the name suggests, is a gathering of people to discuss and compete with each other. And this exchange meeting is international and not public, only those with special identities can know about it. This time, The exchange meeting is held in Fangshou Town in the Kalos region. The task assigned by the higher-ups is for us to disrupt this exchange meeting at all costs and not let it go too smoothly. If conditions permit, it is not impossible to snatch a few Pokemon or have our fellow believers take action. When he said this, Xiu Tucker deliberately paused. Seeing that Takukura was listening carefully, he continued, "After all, no matter what, the goal of our organization is the whole world and even the universe. With the help of this exchange meeting, the higher-ups intend to let us make a good splash. Why? Would this attract more attention from the various alliances? How can the organization develop then, so you are stupid and you?" Xiu Tucker was speaking very smoothly for a moment, about to say what was in his heart, but after sensing a murderous aura, he immediately and decisively changed his words. "So with your intelligence, you must have realized that this is just a diversion. After all, our organization is developing in the open while the other is developing in the dark. After all, what we lack most now is time. When everything is ready, it will be our time to dominate the world, and then, what? What then?" Xiu Tucker was confused by Takuang's sudden question. "So until now you haven't told me the purpose of your visit to me?" Takuang's forehead was throbbing with veins. Then, the higher-ups were worried I couldn't complete the mission alone, so they asked me to find someone to team up with for this operation. And I just asked around, and I found out you're the closest to Fangshou Town, so I found you. Don't you think we're destined for each other?" After Xiu Tucker explained the whole story, Tucker stood up, not really understanding whether he'd listen or not, and headed for the nearby door. Seeing Tucker about to leave, Xiu Tucker grew anxious. This was his chosen best thug. How could he let him get away? Hey, Taku, what do you mean? Even though this isn't a direct order from the higher-ups, they've put me in charge of this, so you have no right to refuse, fool. With your IQ, they'd actually put you in charge? Instead of yelling like that, you should get ready." Tucker, toying with a Pokeball, left without a glance back. "Haha, it really wasn't easy. I finally convinced this lunatic. Things are about to get more interesting." A burst of laughter echoed from the darkened room as Takukura left. Time flew by, and another day was almost over. At dusk, 5 figures, 1 man, 3 women, and a Pikachu, appeared outside Fangshou Town. In the fading sunlight, their shadows were stretched out very long. "Wow! We've finally arrived at Fangshou Town. This Fangshou Town is so beautiful, haha. I don't care whether it's beautiful or not. I just want to fill my stomach." "Yiyu, you're such a fool. You only care about eating, but it's true, Yiyu. After all, I'm really hungry after traveling all day, so what are we waiting for? Let's all head into town and have a good meal." This group of people was none other than Yiyu and his group, who had been traveling all day. Chapter 464 Goodbye Caution. Fangshou Town. This small town is nestled in the northern part of the Kalos region. True to its name, Fangshou Town is blanketed in a blanket of white snow. The vast expanse of white creates a feeling of being transported to a world of ice and snow, hence the town's name. Due to its remote location, not many people come and go. Besides the locals, you can also spot the occasional traveling trainer, wandering the streets with their Pokemon. However, over the past few days, Fangshou Town has seen an influx of unfamiliar faces, almost equal to Fangshou's annual visitor count. These include not only some with reserved faces but also many foreigners. While residents are merely curious, those with insider information know that the once deserted Fangshou Town has become so lively because of the so-called exchange conference being held there this year. Actually, aside from the specific country in which the conference will be held, the location was chosen randomly. Otherwise, the island nation's Pokemon League wouldn't have chosen the remote town of Fangshou Town. After all, when it comes to hosting foreign friends, it's best to choose a bustling metropolis like Mire City, representing a region. Wow! This Fangshou Town is so lively. It doesn't feel like a town at all, it feels more like a city. Upon entering the city, Yiyu, Xiaoxu, and the other 2 girls headed towards the Pokemon Center. Walking along the bustling streets, the cool sensation of falling snowflakes couldn't mask the vibrant atmosphere of Fangshou Town. It was already dusk, and while not as lively as it would have been at night, the lights were already on. Foreign faces could be seen everywhere in the bustling crowd, and even the sound of other languages could be heard. It's quite lively. After all, this exchange is international. While it's not open to the public, it's a major event in our world behind the scenes. And on this day, powerful figures from all over the world will gather here to compete. It's going to be quite a big event, right? Yu sighed. The scale of this event was on par with the martial arts competitions he'd attended before. Pikachu, who had been resting on Yu's shoulder, stood up excitedly upon entering the town. Exchange? This is the first time I've heard of one. What's it like? Air asked curiously, looking sideways at Yu. Air's family was considered a prominent one in Kalos, but even as the daughter of a wealthy family, she had never heard of such an exchange, which really intrigued him. I'm not sure about that either. This is my first time attending. But since it's international, they should be very impressive, Yu speculated. Then, Yu, can we join you? Serena suddenly asked nervously. Serena's question unearthed everything Air and Xiaoxu were thinking. Seeing the three women's eyes, which hinted at Xiaoyi, Yu hesitated for a moment. Why not? Seeing Yu remain silent, Serena assumed he was refusing. Serena wasn't wrong. Yu was actually rejecting the idea. While the exchange was supposed to be a platform for exchanging medical and martial arts skills, from what she had heard from others, it was likely to be turbulent, perhaps even turbulent. Yu didn't want to put the three women in any more danger. Yesterday's incident was a prime example. Just as Yu had suspected, that Jenga was likely sent by Organization S to cause trouble. This made Yu completely vigilant. And he wouldn't let his guard down as he had before. After all, he was a Pokémon trainer, but also a man of the world. Provoking someone like a Pokémon trainer wasn't a big deal. After all, the most they'd do was utterly defeat or humiliate you, and your life would still be safe. But if it were someone from the underworld, you wouldn't be so lucky. If it were any other grand event, Yu might have agreed without hesitation to Serena and the other two. But at the exchange meeting, most people were those from the underworld, revealing a side of the world that ordinary people rarely get to experience. Otherwise, with Air's family background, she wouldn't have been unfamiliar with the exchange meeting in Kalos. Well, if it's so difficult, then forget it. Seeing Yu's lack of response, Air lowered her head in frustration, staring at her toes. Be careful. At that moment, Yu suddenly shouted, startling everyone around them. Before Air could even react, she felt her body lighten and she was instantly thrown into a warm embrace. It turned out that Air, perhaps too upset by Yu's rejection, had been keeping her head down, even a little distracted, and not paying attention to the road ahead. Just as they were about to collide with a pedestrian, Yu hurried forward and pulled Air into his arms. Unprepared, Yu's pull sent Air careening directly into his arms, sending Pikachu careening off and falling backward. But at that moment, Yu was so focused on Air's safety that he completely ignored Pikachu. Air, how are you? Oh my god, isn't that Yu? What a coincidence, a familiar voice called out. Looking up, he saw a sleek bald head, dazzling under the streetlights. I'm not being wary. Why are you here too? What a coincidence. Seeing the familiar monk attire, Yu immediately recognized the wrong person. Amitabha. Yu, it's been a long time since we last met. But you don't look well. Could it be that you've been overindulging? This can't be good. You know, the exchange meeting is the day after tomorrow. Looking at Yu's face, which looked pale from yesterday's lack of recovery and a long day's travel, Jingxin said bluntly. Upon hearing Jingxin's words, Serena and Xiaozu's pretty faces flushed. Even Yu's beloved daughter, who was unconsciously holding him in his arms, blushed. Chapter 465 Settlement. Hey big brother, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. What do you mean by overindulging? If you could survive a battle of unequal strength in one night, get punched by champion-level Pokémon, and still be full of energy and rosy-cheeked, then I'd really admire you. But you didn't intend to say any of this. After all, less trouble is worse than more trouble. Besides, he and Jingxin weren't really close, having only met 2 or 3 times. So Yu could only scratch his head awkwardly, pretending he hadn't heard anything. But when he looked at Jingxin again, the corners of his mouth began to twitch. Hey big brother, what's that look in your eyes? I'm innocent, okay? Following Jingxin's gaze, he saw that his hands subconsciously still held Air, who didn't struggle, but looked extremely shy. At this moment, even facing an enemy infinitely more powerful than himself, Yu remained calm and fearless. His heart skipped a beat, his blood boiling as if it were about to burst forth like steam. Amitabha, form is emptiness, formless emptiness. Jixin's chanting, a voice that sounded inopportune at this moment, echoed. Air, who had also noticed something was amiss, cried out in surprise and scrambled out of Yiyu's arms. Yiyu couldn't help but glare at Jixin, who continued to ramble on. Hey, Jixin, are you done yet? Amitabha. Yiyu, seriously, you must exercise some self-control. Don't let your guard down just because you have 3 beauties accompanying you on this trip. As if oblivious to the discontent in Yiyu's tone, Jixin continued to lecture Yiyu with a serious expression. Yiyu expressed his disinclination and walked forward. However, after hearing Jixin's serious words, the blushes on Air and his daughters, which had faded slightly, resurfaced. Pikachu he brushed off the dust from his fall. Seeing his master ignoring him and moving forward, Pikachu hurried to follow, occasionally glancing up at the shy Air and his daughters, feeling somewhat bewildered and puzzled. Seeing that everyone had left and he was the only one left, Jixin hurried to catch up with Yiyu, then began to chatter. Yiyu, let me tell you something. You know, the exchange meeting the day after tomorrow isn't a Pokemon battle competition for you Pokemon trainers. It's a true martial arts event. Hey, don't walk so fast. Wait for me. And so, with Jixin's constant chatter and guidance, Yiyu and his group successfully found the Pokemon Center. After handing Pikachu and the other mobile Pokemon over to Miss Joy and settling his own luggage, Yiyu, along with Xiaoxia and the other 2, accompanied by his accomplice, Jixin, finally enjoyed a pleasant meal at the Pokemon Center restaurant. Meanwhile, somewhere in China, in the Xianshan Mountains, a quaint little wooden house came into view under the bright moonlight. The moonlight illuminated a sea of flowers surrounding the cabin. At the outermost edge of the sea of flowers, half was a stream, the other half a lush, verdant tree. If someone with a keen eye were to look down from above, they would clearly see that the arrangement of the stream and trees formed a perfect, yin-yang diagram. Although it was already dark, the forest's usual tranquility and peace were completely lost, and instead, it seemed bustling with activity. The Pokemon seemed to feel no fatigue as they ran and played in the surrounding flowers, and from time to time, the chirping of insect-type Pokemon could be heard. Meanwhile, in the backyard of the wooden house, a man, 2 women, and a Pokemon were enjoying the cool breeze. An old man lay on a recliner, holding a purple clay teapot in his left hand and a palm leaf fan in his right. He gazed at the bright moon in the sky, which was as bright as a millstone, and from time to time he would pour tea from the purple clay teapot into his mouth to taste it, gently waving the palm leaf fan, looking very comfortable. Coupled with the magnificent scenery around him, the scene at this moment truly felt like a paradise. 2 young girls sat next to the recliner, and a Suicune was lying not far away, looking very lazy, without the aura of a divine beast at all. Needless to say, these 2 girls were of course Yiyu's senior sister's childhood sweethearts. Hey, Master, what's the matter with calling us here so late at night? Seeing her master's relaxed demeanor, Chen Kalin, the apprentice, was the first to ask. That's right. Grandpa Zhao, what exactly did you want us to do? I still have a lot of things to finish, Li Zuner pouted, also complaining. Why haven't I seen you 2 girls in ages? I wanted you to come keep me company, an old man, but you refused. I wonder which girl was always coming to my place when Yiyu was still here. Zhao Kuang didn't even raise his head, his eyes slightly narrowed as he took another sip of his tea. Master must be talking about you, Sister Zuner. I already live here, why do I need to come here every day? Chen Kalin said, looking quite proud. Li Zuner, after hearing Zhao Kuang's words and Chen Kalin's teasing, felt a little embarrassed. Seeing her comrades on the same front being embarrassed by her master was just too much. Others didn't understand her as a master, so how could she, as an apprentice, understand her too? It was best to be cautious when chatting with her master, otherwise she might be led into trouble. Therefore, Chen Kalin quickly intervened. Master, please tell me quickly, what's the matter? You never come to my temple for no reason. You usually don't seem so anxious to talk to us, haha, it's just a small matter. But you're wrong about that, no one comes to my temple for no reason, but I've been sitting here the whole time, and there's nothing to come to my temple for. Under the table, Chen Kalin clenched her fists, looking like she might throw a punch at any moment. This old man's personality is really getting more and more annoying. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 466 Situation. Although she desperately wanted to give her disrespectful master a beating, Chen Kailan ultimately restrained herself. After all, he was her master. Helplessly, she stood up and made a move to drag Li Zuner away. Master, if you don't say anything, Zuner and I need to go back to bed. We have a lot to do tomorrow. What's the rush? It's not good for young people to be too impatient, Zhao Kuang chuckled, glancing at the two girls around him with cloudy eyes. Chen Kailan was truly frustrated. Why was this master still the same, always keeping things in suspense? Li Zuner didn't say anything, but her eyes showed she was lost in thought. Oh, that's enough. What I want to tell you is about Yu, but since you don't want to hear it, I won't force you, Zhao Kuang muttered, and then closed his eyes to rest. This, Li Zuner and Chen Kailan exchanged looks, then stamped their feet in displeasure. The angry men stood on either side of the manic man, pulling at his own body and shaking it. Master, you're so mean. Stop keeping me in suspense and tell me now. Yes, Grandpa Zhao. If you don't tell me, I'll cut your beard. Yes, Master, if you keep keeping me in suspense, I'll go to Master's wife and complain about you. Seeing Zhao Kuang's indifference, Chen Kailan even lost her threat. After all, this was news about her junior fellow apprentice. While they had gotten information about their junior fellow apprentice through other channels, the more news about their loved ones, the better. No one could have too much. Li Zuner felt the same way. After all, they were childhood sweethearts, and their deep feelings were natural, not to mention they hadn't seen each other for many years. Although the previous incident was motivated by a desire to protect Yu, this one truly hurt Yu. Honestly, both Li Zuner and Chen Kailan felt deeply regretful. Alright, I know you guys care about that brat. Stop talking. My old bones are going to fall apart if you keep talking. Zhao Kuang waved his hands, looking helpless. Even when he looked at his eldest disciple, his eyes were filled with resentment. Is this the legendary elbow turning outward and a daughter being married off like water spilled? He actually wanted to complain to his master's wife for that brat. Alright, I won't keep you in suspense. I say, you two girls are in your prime, don't always stay in the family, busy with this and that. If you keep going on like this, by the time you meet Yu, your hair will probably be white. Zhao Kuang looked at the two incredibly beautiful girls under the moonlight, his tone full of regret. Seeing Chen Kailan and her eldest disciple about to say something to undermine him, Zhao Kuang glared at them, displaying the imposing manner expected of a master. You all know Yu's medical skills are truly remarkable. I taught you that, so don't blame me, a genius doctor, for not warning you. If you keep this up, you'll eventually go bald. Just imagine, will Yu still like you two bald girls? What, bald, my hair turning gray. Although they knew Zhao Kuang was just trying to scare them, Chen Kailan and Li Zuner, the two beautiful girls, felt terrified when they thought of what would happen. They screamed, each louder than the last, as if piercing the darkness of the sky. So, listen to my advice. While you're still young and in your prime, get out and gain some experience. Zhao Kuang said with the tone of a seasoned veteran. But inside, he was filled with joy. Wow. You two are usually so calm in front of me, not even like girls of your age. Now you are scared, right? Thinking of this, Zhao Kuang felt so excited that he wanted to laugh out loud, but he still held it back. If it wasn't dark at this moment, even Chen Kailan and Li Zuner could see the curve of the old man's mouth. However, although Zhao Kuang was very happy in his heart, he didn't dare to show it in front of the two girls. If these two little ancestors knew that he was trying to scare them, then they didn't know whether their hair would become bald or not, but the beard he had worked so hard to grow would probably be bald in the next moment. After coughing a few times to attract the attention of the two girls again, Zhao Kuang put on a serious look. Honestly, I've really wronged you two these past few years. You've been worrying about your own family since you were so young. Although we're not from the same faction, the situation now is so close that our three families are practically one. If it weren't for some obstacles, we could almost have merged. Zhao Kuang first explained the current situation. After hearing Zhao Kuang's first words, Li Zuner and Chen Kailan fell silent. Even with their temperaments, tears welled up in their eyes as years of grievances came to the surface. But after hearing Zhao Kuang's next words, they nodded in agreement. After all, their current situation was just as Zhao Kuang had described. The three families were truly one and the same, practically inseparable. It's important to note that Zhao Kuang and their respective grandfathers were sworn brothers. Just the close relationship between them and Yu alone meant that the three families were on the same side, as close as family. Even though Chen Kalen and Li Zuner still had some misunderstandings with Yu, they weren't too upset. Seeing that Li Zuner and Chen Kalen both agreed with his statement, Zhao Kuang continued, "It's just that in recent years, due to the disputes and infighting between the major forces, Li Yuang and Chen Huan have been forced into seclusion due to pressure, which has caused the burden of your respective families to fall on your shoulders." It's still a bit infuriating. At this point, Zhao Kuang's tone was unusually filled with anger towards his two sworn brothers. And also pity and love for Chen Kalen and Li Zuner, the two girls he had watched over since childhood. Chapter 467 Let Go. Chen Kalen and Li Zuner remained silent as they listened to the anger etched in Zhao Kuang's words. In reality, like Yu, both women shared a common wish, to become Pokemon trainers and travel with Yu. This was once a promise they had made to Yu under the moonlight, but reality eventually forced them to relent. Zhao Kuang's water-based family at least had the support of the elder Zhao Kuang. This allowed Yu to pursue his dream without burden. While becoming a Pokemon trainer wasn't strictly a matter of becoming a Pokemon trainer, he would still be immersed in the martial arts world. But at least, unlike Li Zuner and Chen Kalen, they didn't have to endure the burdens of their families, which was unacceptable at their age. This was a truly enviable blessing. Their intrigues and schemes forced Chen Kalen and Li Zuner to grow up. This was why Yu sometimes seemed immature in front of the two women. Despite the fact that Li Zuner and Chen Kalen's families had flourished under their care over the past few years, Yu's family had thrived. But Zhao Kuang, the old man who had watched them grow up, couldn't bear to watch it any longer. Crystal clear tears shone in the moonlight, silently sliding down the cheeks of the two girls. However, because of the strength they had cultivated since childhood, the two girls did not cry out loud, but just suppressed their sobs. Okay. Don't cry. It won't look good if your faces are red from crying." Zhao Kuang sat up, holding the two girls in his arms, gently patting their backs and comforting them. After the two girls' emotions stabilized a little, Zhao Kuang slowly let them go, and looked at the two granddaughters he had seen grow up with a kind smile. After Chen Kalen and Li Zuner got out of his arms, they hurriedly wiped their eyes, but their noses were still twitching, which made them look very cute. "Master, you're truly wicked. You summoned us here tonight, didn't you, just to make us both cry?" Seeing her master smiling at her, Chen Kalen grumbled a bit. "How could that be?" Zhao Kuang waved his hand, a look of indignation on his face. But he didn't want to keep the suspense any longer, so he simply revealed everything he was going to say tonight. "You two girls, remember this. This is no longer the era of ancient martial arts. This is the era of Pokemon. After all, as you know, even though we warriors are so powerful, we're no match for Pokemon. That's why, even though there are many ancient martial artists far superior to us, we still have a place among the 18 great families. And the reason is because our Pokemon are so powerful. After all, your grandfather and I weren't called the three holy envoys for nothing. Back then, we were awe-inspiring. No, we still are." "What are the three holy envoys?" Li Zuner, clearly unfamiliar with this subject, asked directly. After hearing her master's somewhat smug tone, Chen Kalen's pretty face rarely revealed a look of disgust. "Oh, Zuner, don't you know? The so-called three holy envoys are not because they are taking advantage of Pokemon? Because the master has one of the three sacred beasts, Suicune, and your grandfather Li Yuang has Leguang, and my grandfather Chen Huan has Yandi, the Fire Emperor. Hence the name Three Holy Envoys. After all, no matter what, they are all sacred beasts, and their combat power when grown up is amazing. This is why our family has declined a bit, but still has not fallen out of the 18 major families." Being ruthlessly exposed by his own apprentice, Zhao Kuang was really embarrassed, although what he said was true. He raised the purple clay teapot again and took 2 sips to cover up the embarrassment in his heart. "Don't worry about the details. The most important reason I called you here is that just a few days ago, those two guys, Li Yuang and Chen Huan, finally surrendered and acknowledged the truth under the pressure of my cuckoldry." "So, what do you mean?" Li Zuner was still confused. Zhao Kuang tapped Li Zuner's head in annoyance. "You're usually quite smart, girl. I've made it so obvious, and you still don't know." "Liner, You should explain it to this little girl. Zhao Kuang once again kept the secret. To satisfy his own pretentiousness, after giving Chen Kailan his instructions, he once again picked up the purple clay teapot and drank. After all, it was more elegant this way. But at this moment, Chen Kailan's weak voice rang out, almost making him spit out a mouthful of tea. I'm sorry, Master. I'm not sure what you're trying to say, Alice. We're both disciples, how can there be such a big difference? If it were you, he'd have guessed it without even needing to point it out. Zhao Kuang felt deeply sad. He finally had a chance to show off, and it was lost. It's so hard for me. Come on. I'll tell you straight. A few days ago, I went to see your grandfather. I didn't care how they were doing in seclusion. Under the pressure of my overwhelming aura, they finally agreed to take care of themselves from now on. Zhao Kuang stood up from the rattan chair, hands behind his back. A gust of wind blew, causing his robes and hair to rustle. It was true that Zhao Kuang had the air of an immortal at this moment. However, the truth behind Zhao Kuang's words was known only to him. He had indeed gone to see Chen Huan and Li Yuang a few days ago, and he had indeed tried to persuade them. They had even fought. However, the two elders, Li Yuang and Chen Huan, discovered that they had spent so many years in seclusion practicing martial arts, even neglecting family affairs, solely to focus on improving their martial arts. However, fantasy is ultimately beautiful, and reality will eventually bring you back to reality. After each of them clashed with Zhao Kuang for a while, and finally realized the harsh truth, Chen Huan and Li Yuang finally gave up their obsession with martial arts. And Zhao Kuang's constant persuasion also led them to completely let go. After all, the improvement in martial arts strength can only be a small loss, bullying a weak Pokemon like Caterpillar. If they encountered a powerful Pokemon, they would still be beaten to their knees and beg for mercy, calling for help. Chapter 468 The Dreams of Two Women. After completely letting go of their obsession with increasing strength, Li Yuang and Chen Huan set out to regain control and develop their family's power, hoping to eventually climb higher in the rankings of the 18 major families. Consequently, these two formerly stubborn individuals, after each engaging in a fight with Zhao Kuang, experienced a complete epiphany. The three old men sat together harmoniously again, drinking tea and chatting, so Zhao Kuang wasn't lying. So, doesn't that mean we're free now? We don't have to worry about family affairs anymore, Li Zuner asked tentatively, her tone still tinged with disbelief. Yes, after all, it's not time for you young people yet. We old men should keep fighting, Zhao Kuang sighed, but a rare sharpness flickered in his cloudy eyes. As I said before, this is no longer the age of warriors. It belongs to the age of Pokemon. The survival or strength of a family no longer depends on how many warriors it has or how powerful they are. It depends on how many champion-level Pokemon it possesses and the strength of its network, so this is why Grandpa Zhao allowed you to leave the whirlpool early and pursue her dreams? I'm really a little envious. Li Zuner's eyes were filled with longing. What are you envious of, girl? It's not too late now. After all, you only started your journey this year. All you lack is knowledge about Pokemon. But I believe you should study in your free time. Speaking of which, although the island nation's Pokemon League isn't ranked in the top 3 on the international stage, it can serve as a very good training ground for you. Zhao Kuang's gaze fell on Suicune, who was resting on the ground not far away, his eyes filled with nostalgia. He chuckled from time to time, as if he was thinking of something happy. After so long in silence, perhaps it's time for those three old fellows to reappear before the world. After all, Suicune and the others haven't aged yet. Similarly, due to our own persistent pursuits, our bodies may age, but our hearts never will. After all, Pokemon battles are breathtaking and thrilling events, Zhao Kuang muttered to himself. The emotion in her eyes as she looked at Suicune perfectly mirrored the spirited youths of Suicune, Chen Huan, and Li Yuang. Li Zuner and Chen Kailan fell silent for a moment, perhaps reflecting on their grandfather's sentiments. That's not right, Master. If you could use your domineering aura to persuade our grandfather, why didn't you go sooner? Why go only these past few days? Hasn't that delayed us for years? We've all had to start all over again. And most importantly, if we can't keep up with Yiyu's pace, we're doomed. Chen Kailan, as if suddenly struck by a thought, stared intently at Zhao Kuang, her eyes filled with endless complaints. After Chen Kailan's words, Li Zuner suddenly grew worried. Putting aside the misunderstandings between them and Yiyu, For various reasons, they weren't entirely confident in their Pokemon expertise. After all, reading 1,000 books is like traveling 1,000 miles. Everything requires practice to be effective. Learning from books is ultimately just theoretical knowledge. Due to the pressures of managing the family and the need to improve their own abilities to deter rogues, they had barely even engaged in any Pokemon battles. Their foundations were now even weaker than when Yu was around. Sorry, I only figured this out recently. Zhao Kuang scratched his head sheepishly. After all, it was something he had only figured out recently. Turning around, Zhao Kuang was immediately startled. Li Zuner and Chen Kailin, smiling at each other, stared at him with murderous intent. He swallowed and wiped the non-existent sweat from his forehead. Zhao Kuang forced a smile on his old face. Don't take me so seriously. Although all this hasn't been easy, it will all end well, won't it? I know what you're worried about. I can leave you, just like I did with you, to my good friend, Professor Damu, to look after you. Firstly, you can learn something, and secondly, you can see you more often. Chen Kailin and Li Zuner's faces lit up with longing after Zhao Kuang's words. But it's family matters. Though overjoyed, Li Zuner still felt a little reluctant to let go of them. After all, she had managed her family for so many years. Suddenly being asked to let go and live the life they longed for, pursuing their dreams, was a bit of a challenge for Li Zuner. Even Chen Kailin, after receiving her answer at that moment, felt a sense of emptiness and discomfort. Actually, you really don't have to be like this. Didn't I tell you before? This is no longer the era of ancient warriors, it belongs to Pokemon and Pokemon trainers. So you can pursue your dreams without hesitation. I remember when you two were little, you dreamed of becoming the strongest lightning and fire Pokemon Masters. Lightning Pokemon Masters. Li Zuner's beautiful eyes flickered, her thoughts etched in her mind. Fire Pokemon Masters? I'm really excited just thinking about it. In contrast, although Chen Kailin was also a bit sentimental, she quickly recovered and began to fantasize about becoming a fire Pokemon Master. No, Master, you've digressed again. Didn't you say you were going to tell us about Yu? Why are you digressing again? Chen Kailin, realizing something was amiss, placed her hands on her hips, puffing out her cheeks, a look of deep discontent. Oh, right, I saw you guys were so confused, so I just wanted to comfort you. Zhao Kuang hurriedly made an excuse for himself. He didn't want to take the blame anymore. Sighing helplessly, Zhao Kuang said, Okay, don't show anything you heard. You'll divert the topic later. Now let me tell you about our plans, okay? Chapter 469 Warning. Chen Kailin and Li Zuner stuck out their tongues a bit embarrassedly. They knew that because of them, the amiable old man, Zhao Kuang, had to stop and comfort them. Seeing Zhao Kuang's face turn serious, Li Zuner and Chen Kailin quickly suppressed their expressions and suppressed any small thoughts in their hearts. After all, news about Yu was extremely important to them. If possible, they would want to keep an eye on Yu's movements at all times. Even if someone offered tens of thousands of Alliance coins in exchange for a piece of information, they would probably agree without hesitation. I assume you two have heard of the exchange meeting held in the island nation of Kalos, right? Yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. Chen Kailin nodded thoughtfully. I do know a little about the exchange conference. From what I understand, the exchange conference should be held every few years, and the venue is random. The participants are warriors from the martial arts circles of various countries, or some authoritative experts. Then it will be carried out in the form of a defensive debate, and in the end a strong champion will be selected. Li Zuner told everything she knew, and then frowned and expressed her thoughts. But in my opinion, this exchange meeting has no real meaning at all. Perhaps the medical debate in it is somewhat interesting. The rest is simply a thankless task. Apart from gaining a little fame and reputation, you won't even get a single Alliance coin. After hearing what Li Zuner was thinking, Zhao Kuang couldn't help but curl up his lips. Zuner is right. In my opinion, this exchange meeting is indeed a thankless competition. There is no real benefit. But why are there people from so many countries vying to participate every time an exchange meeting is held? It's nothing more than a fight for a fame, to prove themselves and to prove their country at the same time. Chen Kailin savored the last two sentences of her master, and suddenly a light flashed in her beautiful eyes. I understand, Master. Are you trying to tell us that you will also participate in this exchange meeting? Well, you're right, it's really possible. You know, isn't this exchange meeting held in the Kalos region? And isn't Yu also on a Pokemon training trip in the Kalos region right now? After Chen Kalin's reminder, Li Zuner also reacted quickly. After learning about Yu, Chen Kalin had calmed down. She played with her hair, her fingers twirling. The large, round moon above her face looked as if she could see the figure on the other side of the continent that haunted her. And here's the most important thing. Yu is a passionate and patriotic young man. I heard that her country's performance at these exchange conferences hasn't been very good. I believe that with Yu's personality, even if he's reluctant, he'll definitely attend after hearing this news. After all, he's always taken the country's reputation very seriously. It's safe to say that whenever it comes to national interests, Yu is the most proactive, that's the truth. For a while, when he was little, I don't know where he heard it from, but he used to yell things like, "Anyone who dares to challenge China's majesty will be punished, no matter how far away they are." Li Zuner echoed, a smile hard on her face. Li Zuner's words seemed to have caused everyone present to recall the serious expression on Yu's adorable face as a child. As he'd spoken such words, they couldn't help but chuckle. Remember this, I solemnly inform you. Although we are warriors and Pokemon trainers, the interests of our nation ultimately come before all else. This advice applies at all times. Zhao Kuang's aged face took on an unprecedented seriousness, his eyes filled with earnestness. We understand, Li Zuner and Chen Kalin replied in unison, their expressions equally solemn. Although they were two women, they certainly seemed particularly imposing. Suicune, dozing not far away, heard the commotion and occasionally glanced over curiously. Just remember this. After all, patriotism is the most important virtue for every warrior. Zhao Kuang smiled and nodded, then began to make arrangements for the next steps. So, you can go see Yu at the exchange meeting. After all, neither you nor I have seen him in years. Now that we've decided to give it a go, why should we hesitate? However, if you have other ideas, feel free to go ahead. But I still suggest you spend some time with my friend Oak. After all, besides being a renowned Pokemon professor, he's also a formidable Pokemon trainer. It's no exaggeration to say he's even more formidable than both me and your grandfather. Upon hearing Zhao Kuang's words, Li Zuner and Chen Kalin's mouths opened into O shapes, their pretty faces filled with shock. Zhao Kuang, as his name suggests, was incredibly arrogant and conceited. For him to speak so confidently, and with such admiration in his voice, it was clear he was being genuine. While they didn't fully understand Professor Oak's abilities, whom they had yet to meet, they at least had a good idea of their grandfathers. Their own trainer levels, though not champion level, were certainly above semi-champion level. Even so, the old man before them, though close to their grandfather, had never once shown such admiration. Besides, Yu also lived with Professor Oak for several years. Don't you two want to go see where Yu lived during those years? Zhao Kuang said with a smile. Also, seriously, although you two have attended Pokemon school, practice is always better than theoretical knowledge. I believe you should be able to gain something from following that guy Oak. Zhao Kuang began to coax them. He very much hoped that Chen Kalin and Li Zuner would also go to Professor Oak and study with him for a while. After all, not to mention Professor Oak's status, he was also an extremely powerful trainer himself. Chapter 470 Reunion. After hearing Zhao Kuang's words, Li Zuner and Chen Kalin didn't refuse. After all, although they each dreamed of becoming Pokemon Masters, they had been delayed in recent years by the missteps of their families. Not to mention that Chen Kalin, a year or two older than Yu, still hadn't received her first Pokemon and was away on a journey to train and cultivate. Even in Pokemon battles, their experience was minimal, their theoretical knowledge scarce. If Serena was a complete novice, then Chen Kalin and Li Zuner were only slightly better off. Perhaps even Serena wouldn't be able to defeat them in a Pokemon battle. This only proved that, as Zhao Kuang had said, their focus had been misguided. Therefore, Zhao Kuang believed that renowned scholar Professor Oak was the best place for them. Okay, since you all agree, then hurry back to your old man and ask for your starting Pokemon. Old man, I'm out of Pokemon? Zhao Kuang spread his hands, indicating he had no extra Pokemon. Of course, this wasn't Zhao Kuang being stingy and trying to trick the two women. Everyone has limited energy. To better train and cultivate Pokemon, families with a long history like theirs only cultivate a select few. While they do have extras, they aren't very strong or talented. Therefore, It would be better to have Li Yuang and Shen Huan personally present the Pokémon to their granddaughters. After all, the Fire and Lightning families haven't revealed their heritage. Ah. Master, why are you so stingy? Not only are you giving Yu 2 Pokémon, but you're also giving her a legendary Suicune. Chen Kailan pouted, looking somewhat dissatisfied, her hands on her hips, looking annoyed. After all, who doesn't want a legendary Pokémon? As if this wasn't enough to vent her anger, Chen Kailan's furious expression morphed into a sly smile. HMPH, Master, you're so partial. I'm going to complain to your master's wife, that's enough. Even if you complain to your master's wife, I can't possibly give you a Pokémon, Zhao Kuang said with a nonchalant expression. After a brief moment of meeting Chen Kailan's cunning gaze, he quickly gave in. After all, I'm a very responsible master. Of course, I have to give my apprentice something good, don't you think? Hearing this, Chen Kailan assumed Zhao Kuang was just testing her, and now he was going to give her a Pokémon. She nodded happily, as if it was a matter of course, even extending her delicate hands to Zhao Kuang's side. What are you doing? Zhao Kuang was puzzled, staring at the pair of white hands before him, bewildered. Didn't you test me before? Aren't you going to give me a Pokémon now? Chen Kailan bluntly expressed her thoughts, extending her hand forward and raising it. Zhao Kuang felt a cloud of Murkrows flying overhead, his forehead furrowed in frustration. I'm not saying anything, but Chen Kailan, you're usually quite smart and clever, how come you can't see right now? I really don't have any Pokémon I can give you. The rest are just less talented. And why are you clinging to me? I'm telling you, if you ask your grandfather for it, you might get a surprise. Disappointment washed over both Chen Kailan and Li Zuner. They weren't actually constantly pestering Zhao Kuang for pre-trip gifts, it was simply because of Yu's presence that they, under some kind of psychological influence, wanted it too. How can they be the same? Chen Kailan couldn't help but mutter softly. Alright. Don't all hang around here anymore. I, an old man, need to rest too. Take advantage of these few days to quickly hand over your family affairs to your grandfather. I'll arrange a time to send you to my friend, Professor Oak. Zhao Kuang pretended not to hear and sank back into his recliner, enjoying the natural breeze. Time slipped by silently, and the day of the exchange meeting arrived. That day, after Yu brought Serena and the other two to the Pokémon Center, he noticed quite a few familiar faces. Besides Jinxin, there was Begongming, who had fought alongside him and Jinxin before, Shiba, the fighting king of the Kanto region, Kona, the Ice King, and Yulongdu, the Dragon King, his younger brother, Yulong Zinai. Although they had fought together before, they weren't very familiar with each other. On the other hand, Jinxin, due to their previous battles together and their shared martial arts background, had a more friendly relationship with Begongming. Yu, on the other hand, was more familiar and close to the three kings of Guandu and Yulong Zinai. After all, if you're counted carefully, they had known each other for several years. Although Yulong Zinai hadn't known Yu as long as the three kings, in Pokémon battles, he and Yu were not only rivals, but also comrades. Although Yulong Zinai and Shiba had just met once not long ago, Yu hadn't seen Kona and Du for a long time. Moreover, among the four of them, Kona, the Ice King, held a special place in Yu's heart, and they were even like brothers and sisters. Therefore, this scene occurred in the Pokémon restaurant. After Yu introduced each other, perhaps because they were not very familiar with each other, Begongming and Jinxin found a seat alone and did not join Yu and the others to reminisce about the past. While the restaurant didn't have a large round table or seating, Kona and the other two were, after all, regional champions. Ms. Joy of Fangshou Town was kind enough to honor them and take them directly to the Pokémon Center's dining room for dinner. Of course, Yu's courtesy also played a role. After all, Yu was the adopted younger brother of Masako Joy, the most prominent member of the Kalos region's Joy family. Furthermore, unlike some other families, the members of the island nation's two major medical and police families, the Joy and Gensha families, were remarkably united. Masako Joy's adopted younger brother was, of course, looked after by the other family members. Chapter 471 What a pity. As darkness once again enveloped the earth, even though it was already May, the town of Fangshou in the Kalos region lived up to its name. Aside from the town lights illuminating the night's darkness, everything else was a sea of white. Despite the snow, Fangshou's residents were in high spirits, especially the young, beautiful women who gathered in groups of 3 or 4 to enjoy the shopping. Among them, one could sometimes spot a cute and beautiful Pokemon or two. Some playful children, despite their family's dissuasion, went out to play in the snow. At this moment, the loyal and reliable Pokemon could be seen, following and protecting their little masters like a guardian. Everything signaled the bustle of Fengsu. At that very moment, inside a restaurant within the Pokemon Center in Fengsu, a unique kind of excitement was taking place. Yu, it's been so long. I never thought that little brat from back then has grown so big and strong. Yeah, if you count carefully, it's been 2 years since we last met. Yu, if anyone at the table was the most excited, it would have to be Yu, Watery, and Kona. After all, it had been ages since they last met, and they were all very close. They'd known each other since Yu's time studying under Professor Oak. Watery, Kona, it's been ages. I've missed you so much. Yu's face was filled with excitement, completely devoid of the cold and arrogant demeanor he usually wore around strangers. In front of these familiar people, Yu could completely drop his facade and chat with them easily and heart to heart. However, at this moment, one person among the group seemed quite uneasy, Nobuno Mikhainu. Yulong Zenai was completely stunned. What was going on? Yu actually knew his brother, and judging by the situation, he was also very familiar with the other 2 Heavenly Kings. Especially the Ice-type Heavenly King, Kona. Perhaps she was the only one who didn't know. The tenderness in her eyes when she looked at Yu was more like that of a Water-type Heavenly King than an Ice-type Heavenly King. The number of leveling times often raises questions. Remember, besides him and Yu's group, the other 3 sitting here are all renowned figures. Not only in their home turf of Kanto, but also in other regions, they are well known. After all, the 4 Heavenly Kings of the Kanto region are truly special. Kanto is currently the only region without a league champion. Therefore, the 4 Heavenly Kings' reputation is resounding and carries considerable weight. Often, when one reaches their level, others know them, but they don't necessarily know others. There were so many people trying to curry their favor, yet Yu could actually chat and laugh with these 3 people. If he was right, someone among them might be hiding something. Then he thought about himself. While Urayu knew all 3 of the Heavenly Kings, one of them was his brother, and he knew the other 2 through his brother. As for Serena and the other 3, Yu had already explained his relationship with the 4 Heavenly Kings of Kanto after his initial encounter with Shiba, so they weren't particularly surprised. After all, strictly speaking, all 3 of them were sisters with the Sinnoh champion, Serena, and the Kalos champion, Karuna. And no matter how powerful the 4 Heavenly Kings of Kanto were, they couldn't possibly be stronger than these 2 champion-level sisters. At least that was what Serena, and Xiaoxu all believed. However, if Yulong Zenai knew of this thought, who knows what he would feel? He'd probably shut himself off on the spot, at least for now. Of course, Yulong Zenai didn't know what the 3 women were thinking. Although he was enjoying his delicious meal, his face was filled with confusion. Zenai, what's wrong with you? You seem distracted even when eating. As the older brother, Du was the first to notice that something was wrong with his younger brother. However, Yulong Zenai, still in a state of confusion, seemed to have ignored his brother's question. His hands moved the food like a machine, constantly putting it into his mouth. Although he looked straight ahead, his eyes were dull. After calling out several times to no avail, Du frowned and hit Yulong Zenai's forehead violently, causing him to snap out of his senses and let out a cry of pain. What are you thinking about, kid? Don't you have a girlfriend? Or maybe seeing Yu surrounded by so many beautiful and lovely girls, you're having some bad thoughts? Du's face was serious, but his words were tinged with teasing. As he spoke, his eyes occasionally darted between Yu, Serena, and Kona. No, brother, you misunderstood. How could I possibly have such thoughts? I've said before that I wouldn't even think of having a girlfriend until I became a Dragon Master. Yulong Zenai, having recovered from his shock, waved his hands in panic after hearing his brother's teasing. I was just curious, brother, you actually knew Yu? Oh, so that's who you're talking about. We've known Yu for a long time. Later, at the dinner table, Du and the others recounted their experiences with Yu. Throughout, both Yulong Zenai and Xiaoxu, who had no experience, and Kona and Yu, who had, listened quietly. In the end, after so much talk, we all got to know Yu. Du picked up a glass of juice and gulped it down in a few gulps. After talking for so long, He was actually a little thirsty. Yulong's and I was getting more and more surprised as he listened. In the end, he even forgot about the food. He glanced at his eldest brother, then at Yu, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. So, Yu, you still haven't had a real Pokemon battle with your brothers. Chapter 472 Xiongdu's Challenge. What a shame, Yu, who had just taken a sip from a drink, paused at the slight pity of Yulong's and I's words. A shame? It really is a shame. Putting the drink down again, Yu's lips curled up unconsciously, a subtle hint of fighting spirit in his eyes. Seeing Yu's gaze fixed on him, Du paused slightly while munching on a chicken wing, letting out an awkward smile. After all, even though he was a dragon-type king, Yu's gaze was too terrifying, sending shivers down his spine. He still couldn't forget the madness Yu displayed when, after borrowing Professor Oak's Pokemon, he constantly challenged him to Pokemon battles. If it weren't for the fact that Yu's Pokemon was borrowed from Professor Oak, who then took it back, he would have been driven to his knees. And ultimately, for his own future happiness, Duza shamelessly went to Professor Oak to report Yu, which subsequently led to Professor Oak refusing to lend any Pokemon to Yu for Pokemon battles. Professor Oak was even more blunt, his own Pokemon had the final say. If he wasn't dissatisfied, he would have no control over anything Yu did when he reached adulthood, traveled, and had his own Pokemon. This meant that although Yu had battled Pokemon with Duzet, the king of things, in a sense, the battles were never his own. What Yu wanted now was a true, all-in-one Pokemon battle. Duzet, how about we have a Pokemon battle after dinner? After all, it'll help with our digestion. Yu glared at Duzet with a burning gaze. Under Yu's gaze, the dragon Uranus was completely panicked. In the past, he'd been a bit hesitant to use someone else's Pokemon against me. After all, it wouldn't be nice to hurt him. But now, if he were to use his own Pokemon, the mere thought of it filled him with dread. While he could have ended the battle immediately, he felt it wouldn't be a good idea as a friend. If he didn't end a battle swiftly, it would probably go on. And Yu might get even more excited, which would probably put him out of business. And it wouldn't be good for his reputation if word got out. But even so, with Yu's personality, he'd probably become more courageous with every setback. What if he really got into trouble? He didn't want to be followed around by a Pokemon every day. And he was a grown man, even if he was still young. But he also wanted some privacy. He'd spent his entire life focused on Pokemon battles. He desperately wanted to find a girlfriend and have a sweet romance. After all, no one was like Yu, training and cultivating with 3 beautiful girls by his side. Not to mention the Ice King Kona, who constantly exuded a mature and majestic aura. The look he gave Yu contained such a profound meaning that only a rough-hewn man like Shiba and a battle-crazed Yu could miss it. The more he thought about it, the angrier Du felt. The food, once so delicious, seemed to have lost its flavor. What? Yu, you're actually going to have a Pokemon battle with my brother, Yulong Zinai, who was sitting next to Du, exclaimed in disbelief. He looked at Yu as if he were a monster. Who is this? Who is this? Even Yulong Zinai, who was already relatively familiar with Yu, couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. Yulong Zinai knew Yu was a battle-crazed man, but he didn't have to be so aggressive. You have to remember that his brother, Du, is one of the 4 heavenly kings of Kanto. He's even known as the Dragon Master. If it weren't for the stat differences among the 4 heavenly kings, his brother Du might even have won the Kanto League. After all, that's pretty much what happened. In the final round of the Champion Challenge, Du defeated the other 2, Ghost-type King Tangerine and Fighting-type King Shiba. If it weren't for Kona's Ice-type Pokemon countering Du's Dragon-type Pokemon, perhaps a champion would have emerged from Kanto right now, instead of being in this awkward situation. That's why Yulong Zinai was so shocked when he heard Yu was actually challenging his brother. Yu, are you sure you're not mistaken? You really want to go into Pokemon battle with my brother? You should be about the same strength as me, but I lost miserably to my brother before, isn't there a saying? The one who knows you best is often your enemy or opponent. As a formidable opponent, Yulong Zinai naturally knew Yu's strengths. He was incredibly direct, practically slamming Yu with words like "Don't overestimate your abilities, you're courting humiliation, I know I'll lose. But if I give up the challenge just because you know you're too strong, how can I become the world's greatest Pokemon Master? I made a promise to my Pokemon to grow stronger together and reach the pinnacle of the world." Yu showed no fear at all at Yulong Zinai's words. Instead, a fire of fighting spirit blazed in his eyes. Clearly, our Yu was ignited once again. Excellent, Yu is such a force. How can we be indifferent to a small obstacle? We must rise to the challenge and show our resolve. Even the fighting type king, Shiba, was deeply moved, rising from his chair, his fighting spirit ablaze around him. After hearing that someone actually agreed with his words, Yu seemed even more excited. Yeah, that's right, Ziba, this is the momentum. Let's cheer together. Come on, Ziba responded enthusiastically. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 473. Did I agree? Fangshou Town. At this moment, Fangshou Town was clad in a blanket of white snow. Inside the Pokémon Center's dining room, however, the scene was quite different. While the temperature outside was low, even snowing, it was still quite warm inside. Especially in a place like the Pokémon Center, which is almost always heated, it didn't feel particularly cold. Yet, even in this mildly warm environment, Serena and the others dining in the dining room felt incredibly hot, with beads of sweat visible on their fair foreheads. As for why? There was no answer. Who said there were two massive heaters in the room? Following everyone's gaze, they saw that Shiba and Yu had transformed into two massive heaters, their bodies faintly visible, enveloped in flames. I didn't expect them to actually catch fire. Haha, Serena exclaimed in surprise. Perhaps this is what the Chinese say, birds of a feather flock together, Kona said, speaking up for once. Oh. I didn't expect Yu to be sick again. Yulong Zenai shook his head and smiled bitterly. Du immediately perked up. After taking a sip of juice and a drink, he looked at his brother with curiosity in his eyes. What's wrong with you? I remember Yu was a very good doctor, wasn't he? What else could it be? Of course it's Chuan. He gets so excited whenever it comes to fighting. And big brother Shiba seems to be the same way. I'm impressed by these two, Yulong Zenai couldn't help but complain. But why did I hear that every time you battle Yu's Pokemon, you always end up losing? Du chuckled, looking at his brother with a playful look on his face. Yulong Zenai choked up. He began to doubt whether this was his real brother. Why was he trying to undermine him? Seeing his brother's speechless expression, Du couldn't help but reach out and rub Yulong Zenai's head. Perhaps it's Yu and the others' personalities that make them so powerful. Yulong Zenai fell silent, as if pondering his brother's words. However, Yu wasn't about to let Du go. Seeing that he seemed to be ignoring him, Yu didn't mind, but the fighting spirit that was lingering in his body only intensified. Du, let's have a Pokemon battle. Even if it's just one, I want a fair and square Pokemon battle that's completely mine. Du didn't know what to say. He had thought Yu would have changed after all these years, but he hadn't expected his nature to change. The thought was painful. Hey, Yu. What's wrong with you? Do I owe you money? Or did I steal your wife? What do you want in exchange for letting me go? Du was practically in tears, completely lacking the aura of a Dragon King. There was nothing he could do. Yu was a lunatic, battling a lunatic. If he agreed to this, Yu might just pester him. Even Du could imagine what life would be like if he were to get entangled with him. Imagine this, if someone suddenly appeared while they were using the restroom and yelled, "Let's have a Pokemon battle," they'd probably be so frightened that they'd hold their urination back. Or, let's say they finally found a girlfriend and were on a sweet date, and suddenly this tactless person appeared and yelled, "What's so good about having a girlfriend? Let's have a Pokemon battle, guaranteed to make you feel better." He wondered if his girlfriend would be upset, but she'd definitely get a slap in the face. You didn't offend me. How could you? We're good friends. Yu's face was filled with confusion. And he scratched his head, looking innocent. Okay, I admit defeat. I beg you, what do you want in exchange for letting me go? Du clasped his hands together, looking at Yu with a bitter expression. Yu's eyes lit up, however, thinking Du had agreed to a Pokemon battle. His heart was filled with excitement, and he blurted out, "Of course, let's have a fight. If we're men, we'll use Pokemon to decide the winner." Oh, sorry, I'm still a boy, not a man. How could Du agree to that? He pulled up his lips into an ungainly smile. A quick glance, as if seeing something, made his eyes light up. Suddenly, Du, as if seeing a savior, slammed the table and stood up. Of course, Yu had no idea what this meant. He simply thought Du was agreeing to Pokemon battle. Excited, Yu cheered inwardly and quickly picked up his chopsticks. He kept tackling the exquisite dishes on the table, his cheeks puffing out. His demeanor startled everyone. Yu, what are you doing? I know you're hungry, but you don't have to be so exaggerated. It's like I'm torturing you. Eat slowly, don't choke. Yulong's and I came to his senses after Du's sudden pat, and after seeing Yu's series of actions, he could only smack his lips. Seeing everyone looking at him with strange eyes, Yu's hands continued to move quickly, but because he was so full, his words were a little slurred. Du, first, it's the big rock Pokemon? Didn't you agree to Pokemon battle now? What did you say? Swallow the last bit of food first, we can't hear you, Kona said. If you looked closely, you could see the concern in her beautiful eyes behind her glasses. Ahem, he patted his chest a few times and swallowed everything in his mouth. Although Yu's face flushed slightly, he couldn't hide his excitement. Didn't Du agree to Pokemon battle? Take advantage of this moment to eat more, or you won't have the chance later. Yu grew increasingly excited. If Pikachu and the others weren't still recovering at Mistjoy's, he'd probably have already eaten his fill in the backyard battle arena. Ahem, let me say this softly. When did I agree to Pokemon battle with you? Chapter 474 Kona. When did I agree to have a Pokemon battle with you? Du's weak voice rang out. The voice was not loud, but in this closed and somewhat noisy space, it seemed so clear that the atmosphere of the whole scene suddenly quieted down. Yu wanted to say something else, but at this moment, he was like a Gotha duck with its neck strangled, unable to speak any more. And the excited smile on his face froze, completely solidified on his face. Don't look at me like that. I never said I wanted to have a Pokemon battle with that kid. Facing the gazes of everyone, Du looked innocent. But if you don't agree, just say it directly. Why are you slamming the table so excitedly? I thought you agreed. Shiba glared at Du with some dissatisfaction, causing him to be happy in vain. What a waste of his expression, wasn't it? That's right, slamming the table is fine, but why did you even stand up? We all really thought you agreed. Seeing that his brother seemed to be frustrated, Yulong's and I would not let this opportunity go. After all, his brother had just put him down. You little brat. How about we practice first? I don't think our fight was satisfying enough before, and I think you need some guidance. Du smiled maliciously, thinking with a bit of pride in his heart. Although I don't want to face you, the battle maniac, but if it's against you, a small fry, it will be easy to be defeated. Okay. Let's do it. No, I think we should just forget it. Two completely different voices rang out, and you can hear the emotions in the words of the two speakers. One is panic, the other is excited. Yes. Since you want to battle my brother so badly, how about I give you this chance? Yulong's and I looked at Yu with hope, like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. Yu's eyes suddenly lit up, and his head nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, his expression radiating excitement. Yes, I couldn't ask for more. Hurry up, shut up, Du muttered inwardly, glaring at his brother fiercely. I've heard of people cheating on their fathers, but you've never heard of people cheating on their brothers, Du. Come on, just one round. Yu's words were filled with pleading, even to the point of being unscrupulous and acting cute and coquettish to get Du to agree to Pokemon battle. Everyone present, whether it was Serena and the other three women or the other three kings, felt goosebumps all over. Enough of it. Yu, isn't it enough that I'm afraid of you? Du sighed with a look of despair, then glanced to the side slightly, and after seeing the beautiful figure next to him, he immediately cheered up. A malicious dark color appeared on his face again, and his fingers stroked his chin, with a special kind of wretchedness. Yu, I really want to ask you a question. Why do you have to pester me? You can also challenge others. There are many people who are stronger than me. I think Ziba is a good choice. Didn't I tell you before? I met Ziba in Aromatherapy City. We had a battle at that time, but I lost in the end. Yu had an indifferent look on his face, and he was not frustrated or dissatisfied at being defeated by Ziba. Besides, I don't think I'll ever be able to reach the level of strength needed to defeat Shiba in such a short time. Rather than humiliate myself once again, I might as well choose you, someone of comparable strength, to test my own abilities. Du was speechless for a moment, feeling it made perfect sense. What you said makes perfect sense. But why don't you go find Kona for a Pokemon battle? If I remember correctly, you two are still siblings. Although Du was questioning Yu, the smile on his face suggested a certain spectatorship. But just as Du finished speaking, Yu felt a gaze fixed on him. The corners of Yu's mouth twitched slightly. The more he didn't want it, the more it happened. He steeled himself and looked towards Kona's seat, only to meet her gaze, which was filled with profound meaning. Yu's earlier high spirits vanished, like a mouse seeing a cat, and he instantly wilted. With a wry smile, Yu was the first to lose patience with a stare and looked away. What's wrong? Yu, you seem really scared of me, Kona asked with interest. How could that be? You're my sister, dear Kona. I can't wait to be close to you, so why would I hide from you, Yu said, but sensing Kona's gaze, he couldn't raise his head, so he lowered his gaze. Then look up at me. Kona's voice remained sweet and gentle, like a caring older sister next door. This isn't good. Yu seemed hesitant, even stuttering under Kona's intense gaze. A pair of delicate hands slammed down on the table, creating a crisp, resonant sound. There's nothing wrong with that. Just look up when I told you to. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Kona suddenly erupted, instantly transforming from a gentle, intellectual queen to a cold, ice queen. Her voice lost its gentleness, now giving off a chilling vibe. At this moment, Kona unleashed her icy king aura to its fullest. The room, once warmed by the passion and fighting spirit of Yu and Ziba, suddenly lost its warmth, plummeting to freezing point. Ziba, considered one of the stronger among the group, shuddered. Her trembling arms folded across her chest, her shivering appearance absurd. Yu shuddered at the icy voice of his godsister, but, overcome by her overwhelming power, he slowly raised his head to meet her icy gaze. Ha Yu, you've become so much more powerful in these years. You've grown so powerful. You didn't even say hello when you saw me, Kona's sneer echoed in everyone's hearts, but fortunately, the power she exuded was directed solely at Yu. Chapter 475, Trick. They say the agonizing contrast of ice and fire is the most difficult test in the world. While many might not believe this, at least the group dining in the Pokemon Center's restaurant believed it. If only they had known, they shouldn't have complained about the heat. They'd have enjoyed the warmth provided by the artificial stove while quietly savoring the food on the table. Wouldn't it have been delicious? Now, while the food was still palatable, the dining environment felt like being on the street, shivering in the cold while eating. The delicious food lost its flavor. Compared to the three grown men, Serena and the other two were far more discerning. Seeing the glances and actions between Yu and Kona, their suspicions deepened. There must be something fishy going on between these two, some hidden secret. This was the conviction of the three women. Although they were deeply curious and even wanted to ask Yu directly, due to their status, they ultimately could only be bystanders. However, it was also because of Kona that Serena and the others gained a new understanding of Yu. Sister Kona, you misunderstood me. How could I ignore you? I was just so excited to see you that I didn't know what to say. Yu smiled awkwardly, her face full of flattery. Looking at Yu's Growlithe, who seemed to be trying to please her trainer, Kona was both angry and amused, but she didn't show it on her face. Her expression remained impassive. Really? But why do I always feel that you are so bold? You are completely unlike the cute Yu from before. Are you pretending? Did you kidnap my cute little brother? Yu was almost crying at this moment. My sister, my real sister. Okay, although she is just my adopted sister. But you can't frame me like this. I am your cute little brother who was given to me by Rugia. Sister Kona, can you please stop messing around? I really am Yu. I didn't greet you earlier, it's my fault. Isn't it enough for me to apologize? If that doesn't work, then to prove my innocence, I'll just have to recount everything we've experienced together. For example, the first time we met, or when you took me to the school Pokemon battle hosted by Grandma. With each incident Yu listed, Kona's beautiful, mature face grew redder, until it was the color of a ripe peach. Her face was practically dripping with water. Before Yu could finish, she interrupted with a sharp, delicate voice, "That's enough. Shut up, you little brat. You're really itching to get a beating." Yu realized then that in her desperate attempt to prove her sincerity, she had nearly spilled some of Kona's secrets. Fortunately, though, Kona's warning helped him stop in time. Although Yu had silenced himself in time, his previous words had been overheard by everyone present. Immediately, Flirtatious glances darted between Yu and Kona. Du and Shiba, the two kings, were particularly unruly. Their sleazy smiles didn't seem like those of the dragon and fighting kings who dominated a region. Yu, aren't you eager to have a Pokemon battle? How about we have a round? If you beat me, I'll give you a small gift, how about that? After Shiba and Du's banter, the atmosphere in the room finally began to calm down. Warmth once again enveloped everyone. Kona's queenly aura vanished. She sat elegantly in her chair again, not touching her chopsticks, her beautiful eyes fixed on Yu, a hint of aura in them. Yu's smile faltered. Even now, he couldn't forget the moment he was frozen in ice by the opponent's Dragonite's freeze ray. But seeing Kona's confident smile, Yu was suddenly caught in a dilemma. This Du is truly abominable. If he had agreed to Pokemon battle sooner, none of this would have happened, Yu complained to Du inwardly, annoyed. Pichu just then, Du sneezed. Rubbing his nose, Du stared suspiciously at Yu and Yulong's eye, his gaze flickering back and forth between them. Who's saying bad things about me? Kona ignored Du's muttering, his beautiful eyes still fixed on Yu, awaiting his response. What Yu didn't notice was that even as he pondered whether to agree to Pokemon battle with Kona, his son and daughter were secretly studying him, as if they could read something into his expressions. Yu was such a playboy. Xiaoguang and I hadn't kept a close eye on him, and now he had a formidable competitor. What should he do? Xiaoguang, please come and support me. I'm almost overwhelmed by the firepower alone. Otherwise, our agreement will become a joke. This was Serena's most straightforward thought. And let's look at the thoughts of the other two women who had a somewhat ambiguous relationship with Yu. Men are truly pigs. Having the company of three beautiful girls like us wasn't enough, and now there's this intelligent and mature older sister. Is this the type of girl that all boys like these days? This was Ayer's thought. Ugh. I suddenly feel so exhausted. Why does it feel like there's suddenly another strong competitor out of nowhere? Xiaoxu felt a little frustrated. Of course, neither Yu nor Kona knew what the three women were thinking. If they knew, they would probably have completely different thoughts. What are you thinking? Come on, be frank. This doesn't sound like the style I knew at all. Kona rarely showed her feminine demeanor, pouting in dissatisfaction. Yu had thought it through at this moment. After hearing what Kona said, he blurted out, "Come on, I'm not afraid of you. If you lose, don't cry again, stop talking nonsense. If you want to fight, just fight. Who would cry? You are the one who will cry if I beat you." Humph, Kona was like a charming cat whose tail was stepped on, and his fur exploded. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.